I think that our introduction of everyone that is here, I think we've covered everyone. Our next order is to adopt the agenda that we have received the other day. And are there any additions or corrections to the minutes, to the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Kathleen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. I need to wait for the online folks. I need to remember that. Okay, thank you. So the agenda is approved. Now, I hope that folks have had a chance to take a look at the minutes from our June 16th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to these minutes? All right, then I'll need a motion for their approval.
Second.
Oh, the rest of the commission has arrived. Good.
Well, you
Welcome.
kind of locked us out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nicely done.
Not true. But you've been down that road, you know? Right.
I do know.
Yep.
Madam Chair, now that I've had the chance to be here in person,
Yes.
very disappointed with the plaza work at the Capitol. Just, there were comments about
I
no
mean,
shade.
they are working,
It's bad.
tearing it up.
Tearing it up over there.
Mhm.
Such a shame.
Yep.
And the Holocaust memorial.
That's another subject.
Yeah.
That's another subject, right. All right, Stephen, why don't you and John, now that you have your breath, introduce yourselves?
Steve Burton, City of Tallahassee. Thanks for letting us into the meeting room.
We really didn't want
John
to.
Phelps.
I know. I honestly, I totally know that.
I'll let Steve introduce. John Phelps, now retired, formerly clerk of the House and staff director of Senate Rules and director of the Historic Capitol Museum.
Good, thank you, John.
Thank you.
And thank you for being, you two for being persistent. I've been locked out many times.
We tried to call.
I know, nobody answers because they're all in here, that's right. You can call my phone. Yeah, okay.
You don't want us to call you on your cell phone. I mean, I thought that was a very clear direction.
So anyway, we're talking about the minutes from the last meeting, and we've asked for addition or corrections. There are none. I can't remember whether we had a motion to approve. I need a motion. Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Parker. Any discussion on the minutes from the June 16th meeting? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. That's good. Let's see, the next one is, my comments. I don't have too many, other than I want to say how happy I am with the budget and, what the Department of State and the division in particular received this year. I think that's a testament to all of our work, and when it comes to special category grants, they were all funded again, and I think that this strategy that we developed of joining all of the statewide historic preservation groups together and having grassroots lobbying by the members of those organizations has worked. And besides, now it's kind of back in the flow of the budget, and I hope it continues, but we will continue to pay attention to it next year. But this has been a bumper year for many things, but it finally is a bumper year for the Division of Historical Resources. And I can say it is about time. Rick even got the architect there.
What?
Yeah, right.
You got an architect on the side?
Well, you've got the position and the money, and I mean, it's on.
90,000, I think I heard, right? 80, okay. Better than 35.
You're smiling, you're not pounding the table for the 49th time.
I mean, for years.
I know.
Years.
Years.
I know. I mean,
I'll get paid for it.
I mean, let's not, underestimate the wonderful
That's right.
world of the Florida, job creators that created this budget, that allowed us to have these surpluses.
And I hope we've all thanked our contacts in the legislature and the lobbying world. We are grateful. And that's really all I have to say. I think we have a good year. We're looking at another year, and we've got some interesting topics as we begin to be well into our We're More Active Commission stage. Okay, and now, Madam Director.
I guess I'll come up front. I'm not so used to having so many people here.
I know, it's about time.
At the table.
Yeah.
Don't know the last time we had so many people, maybe I don't know if we had this many people here for the grants the last time when we reviewed grants. So it's really nice to have you here, see all your faces. As Chairman Bentz mentioned, we are so excited that we were able to receive so much funding from the legislature. Special category grants funded at $8.4 million. The museum master plan at $300,000. We're working on an RFP, or I guess invitation to negotiate for that. Also, the Main Street technical assistance money was $525,000. We're working on getting that bid as well. As I told the Commissioner Gonzalez, we don't have any applicants, or at least 2 days ago when I checked, we didn't have any applicants for the architect position, so we just got to do a better job of getting that out into the world, and hopefully we can find an appropriate person. But we're really excited to have that position available again, and it's going to be really helpful when we come to grant time and are able to review those and do more of the in-depth technical reviews on tax credit projects, and also hopefully travel a lot more and be able to actually go and provide technical assistance on the ground. It's one of our goals. We also, as I mentioned last time, received 4 OPS position conversions. We are right now about to hire 2 of our grants people that will be career service. So we'll have a little more help in the grant section. And then we've also got our rental manager and another Main Street position that we're currently working on. Additionally, with staff, I'm really trying to work to sort of reclassify things, move things around, especially while the Museum of Florida History has been closed, which I'll touch on in a moment, and try to give people stair steps, because I feel like, that's something that's been missing, is people come here to work and then, they can't wait 20 years till somebody retires in order to get promoted. So I want people to feel like they have sort of an upward motion and are able to kind of move up in their career. At the same time, we're really happy we were able to get the 5% raises from the legislature, and that's really helped us some. We've also received a little money from the legislature. The department got a little money for compression raises, so that's something I've been working with our administrative services staff on, and I'm hearing our list has gotten approved. So a few people that are sort of in that lower tier, we'll hope, that sort of mid-30s range will hopefully be getting a little bit more help to retain them for longer. We are in the process of hiring an information specialist in our office who will report to John Grandage, give him a little more time to work on these construction projects, and do a little more outreach, social media, press releases, and I think we're always striving. I think we're doing a lot better job to get outreach to the public, but that's somewhere we've always been, a little below the radar, and we really want to shine, and we want to give people an idea of all the great things the staff is doing here. Alexis Johnson, as you met her, she's our new executive assistant. If you have receipts for your hotel rooms or any other receipts you acquired while you were here, please give them to her, and we'll get your travel reimbursements done as soon as we can. A couple of bills of interest that we talked about last time. One bill, HB 49, passed, and it created the Historic Cemeteries program. With that provided us 3 positions, which is kind of unheard of. We got a supervisor and 2 career service positions for that program. So the advertisement for the supervisor is currently out down the street on People First. If you want to go there, or let me know, and I can send you a link to that if you know someone that would be interested in applying. And the idea is that we would first hire the supervisor and kind of let them get a little time under their belt, and for them to hire, depending on what their qualifications are. We don't want to have a lot of overlap. So, if they have a background in history and genealogy, then maybe we want to hire, I don't know, an archaeologist or a historian is like the other position. We want to kind of spread those criteria out. What that bill also did, in addition to the 3 positions, was to create a cemetery council, an advisory council. So we are currently working on members right now to that advisory council, and those will be proposed by me to the secretary, and then we hope to have meetings starting later in the year. We have $1 million that was appropriated as part of that bill for specifically African American abandoned cemeteries grant. So the entire program is for all cemeteries. but the $1 million is specifically for abandoned African American cemeteries. So we will be, actually, Angie Tomlinson has been working very hard, and other staff, Eric Case as well, to put together the grant guidelines, and those are, I believe the FAR notice just went out yesterday, the notice of rule development, so we have to develop a rule first. Even though we only have 1 year to spend the money, we need to develop the rule and then do that before we can get an application out, and we're hoping to, I think, get the application out maybe in late September.
I think,
Yeah,
based on the rulemaking process.
and get those reviewed, and so the idea is that the cemetery council, once they are appointed, they would be the ones that would review those grants. It wouldn't have to be you all. No extra work on the historical commission, which is a good thing. And then we're also working on a website for the cemetery council, cemetery program. That language is actually on my desk, so as soon as I can get to that and get that reviewed, and get through communications, then that will go up. And also, another bill which passed was HB 1441, or Senate Bill 1616, which created the Black History Museum Task Force. Those members of that task force, there are 9. They are being appointed by the governor, the president of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House. And we are almost there on those members, on getting those appointed. And we will likely have 4 to 5 meetings over the next year. There'll also be a website created for them shortly to give you more information. We'll connect you with that. We'll send that out to you. And those members will meet and basically come up with ideas about where the location of the museum might be, what it would look like, what type of topics would be covered, and sort of at the end of the year we would do a report to the governor and all these folks who are appointees from what the results were. And so I guess the idea is the legislature would look at that and determine whether or not they wanted to fund that in the next cycle. Also, another thing that passed that we'll talk a little more about later when we talk about monuments and memorials was SB 1506, which expanded the Capitol complex to include the R.A. Gray building and the area across Monroe Street from the Capitol. And it designates the Memorial Park to include that area. And specifically, that's where the Elliott Building sits. I reported last time the Elliott Building will be demolished. So we've been working with Department of Management Services, and that's going well, to mitigate that impact. We are doing HABS Level 3, if you're familiar with the Historic American Building Survey. Just document that. They have the original plans for the building, which is great, so they'll go in and do some photography. And then we're going to save the light fixtures off the front, the pendant fixtures, and the front doors will go to, thank you, Mr. Bertman, for pointing that out, will go to salvage at least and not go in a landfill. So that's a good thing. And then the archaeology there'll be some shovel testing that occurs, and we'll see where we go from that, if we need to do some additional units or anything, depending on what's there for the archaeology.
I just have a quick question, maybe this is better for you. Do you have have you pulled permits? I mean, when does the actual machines come and?
That's not our,
right.
our part.
Did they give you a timeline of when you have to be out, or?
We're not in the Elliott Building. It's another agency. Yeah.
I got that.
Yeah.
But I would suspect if they are allowing you to go in there and take pictures and stuff like there's got to be some type of timeline.
Their timeline is to have it demolished by December.
Okay, that's what
I don't know if that will occur or not.
Right.
And again, it's not us taking pictures. That's something they have to contract and they have to handle. It's just they turn it into us.
Okay.
So we want to be as helpful as we can, but I have also let them know that the city of Tallahassee's bicentennial is during 2024, and probably the last thing we want is a big orange construction fence on Monroe Street, but I don't have any control over that. So I have let everyone know that is happening next year, and I think there's some push also to get it demolished and to show progress before the next legislative session, and which is obviously in January earlier this year. Yes.
Melissa, you mentioned, if I may, you mentioned possible site evaluation. Are you talking about some archaeological studies?
There is a site that is marked, I can't remember the site number, but it was an early discovered site. And so they have hired our cultural resource management firm, through the architect, to go in and do some limited shovel testing, and then we'll determine if there's anything there, then we'll determine how to proceed.
Well, we know there's a site across the road, if you think, right, that it's all that you work there?
I think that was at the Washington Square, which was where the county courthouse it's close. No, John Green?
No, there was a site that, PAR, Public Lands investigated, known as the Washington Hall Hotel site,
Yeah.
which is the origin of the 1843 Tallahassee fire. And so associated buildings to the north of that, including on this parcel, could be associated with that, and certainly prehistoric sites, of which there are documentation on Capitol Hill.
And we expect, Commissioner?
Well, go ahead and answer your.
Well, I was just gonna say, we expect a lot of that area to be disturbed. You know, we've got Appalachian Parkway that was constructed, we've got the LE building. The thing we don't know is how much fill has been placed on top of there, and so I encourage them, yes, go down a meter, but, you know, to the guidelines, but if you're still, if seeing fill, then you need to go deeper, because if it's something prehistoric there, the last thing I want to happen is for them to get in the middle of construction and say, oh, you didn't tell us that there might be something that was deeper down, so, do you have a question?
Yeah, why is this nice historic building being torn down?
It was a legislative appropriation that this, and a bill that this
For what
occurred, so
purposes? I mean,
it's for the Memorial Park,
to put a memorial there.
Memorial Park.
And how are you gonna get to that memorial? There's no crosswalk.
That's
on
out of my
Appalachian
purview.
Huh?
That's out of my purview. That's the department.
They gave you the architect, they took away the building.
There's no way to get over there from this side of the street. If you look
There is one down by the Capitol.
like 500 feet away from that corner.
Down from the corner of the Capitol complex, goes across to the city, to the county building.
Yeah.
To the right, to the immediate right. You can, it's not.
It's on the corner of Jefferson, but not on East Pensacola and not on Appalachia. Appalachia, what's the name of that?
Appalachia, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, to me, it just sounds not very well thought out.
Well, we are doing our part to make sure we're.
There's no pedestrian,
Right now, currently, there may be in the construction.
that's the busiest road when you come into Tallahassee for us outsiders, right? And everybody makes that right-hand turn. Everybody. I hate to be a pedestrian trying to cross that street to go look at the whatever memorial they're gonna put over there. I know you can't do anything about it, but, I wish we could do something about it, because it's, why be on a committee to review these projects when citing, demolishing historic building? I thought we were about preserving historic
Well, we have to
buildings.
remember that we only make recommendations, and our recommendations for several things have been ignored, but at least we have made them, and we've made them strongly. Right.
Steve, it's your day job, right? You're gonna make downtown more pedestrian friendly anyway.
And actually, we have to.
One could argue that is, that's a burden that DOT doesn't really take seriously.
That's like the director's report.
Right.
Actually, we have this on as an agenda item for the memorial, talk about the memorial
do.
later, so
Right.
maybe that could come up during that. Not that I don't enjoy the discussion. Let's see. Other building projects that we have going on, we are nearing completion of our repairs and ADA upgrades on the Union Bank building, which you're also familiar with. It's in that area on the opposite side of Appalachian Parkway. So that is, a state building, which is managed by us, but subleased to the Black Archives at FAMU on a long-term lease. So we have been working with them to upgrade the exhibits there and to sort of refresh that building, do some briefing work, paint everything, redo the kitchen area. It's gonna look, I'm really excited about it, the way it's gonna look. So, don't hold me to it, but I'm going to try to have our meeting in the Union Bank. That's gonna kill me, but,
Very nice.
I wanna try to have our meeting there, and we're gonna do like a soft opening in October, and the idea is for the exhibits to then go in, and we would have, the opening February 1st for Black History Month. And so that would obviously be during legislative session, which is also a great thing, invite people over, to view the building. It's right across from the Capitol. So, really excited about that one. We're still working on all of our maintenance projects that were funded by ARPA funds, which were the COVID funds. We are awaiting for some reassignment of funds from our ADA project over to our council house project. If you're familiar with Mission San Luis and the big conical shaped, thatched, structure there of the council house, we received $800,000. We actually needed $1 million, and I know that sounds like a lot of money, but that is the fake faux thatch that we're putting back on there, and it's supposed to last for many, many, many years. Hopefully in my lifetime, I will never see that replaced. because we had been replacing the thatch on those about every, I think, 8 years at $300,000 a pop. So it just was not something that we can continue to do. So once we get those funds moved over, that project should only be a 90-day project. We've got all the planning done. We're ready to pull the trigger on that and go. Let's see. We've also been working on fire sprinkler systems that are to be installed at the Knott House and our collections building, the current collections building, and also an HVAC project going on at the Knott House. We are working through our lead paint surveys. I mentioned at one of our past meetings that we found lead paint in several of our historic buildings, which is very normal, but it just had not in some sense been maintained, and when you have it and it's flaking, that's when it becomes a problem. So we're trying to abate that. We did receive money from the legislature this year. It was $3.4 million, which is wonderful, which will get us a good start on that, and that'll be for Messer House, Brokaw McDougal, Martin House, and the Carriage House nearby. Actually, Martin House is fine. We just want to do some additional sealing of the surfaces there. And a couple other, the Burr Cottage at the Grove. So staff is kind of displaced at this point, and this will really help us get them back into those spaces. Let's see, we've also are almost there on our Messer House architectural documents. The Messer House, if you don't know, is the historic Spanish-style house that sits in the center of the Mission San Luis property. That's from, I think, the 1930s, 38. And it's also on the National Register. So this will be for planning, and so we can continue to, as we have funds, continue to do the restoration on that house. And then also the Brokaw McDougal House, which is over behind Leon High School, is our property, and everyone's moved out at that at this point. So we'll start with pulling the old electrical wire out of there. It's probably got the old asbestos wiring, and then doing plaster repair and things like that as we do the lead abatement. Let's see. And then, skipping to a different topic, we had our Preservation on Main Street Conference, July 26th through 29th in Ocala, and I know Commissioner Gonzalez was there. I think, Kathleen, you weren't there. You weren't there. But we had a wonderful time in Ocala. We were really well received. The city just rolled out the red carpet. The secretary was there. He had a wonderful tour. We had our awards banquet, and just a really wonderful time. I think we ended up with we're over 300 people that attended. I don't have that exact number with me, but we partnered with the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. This is our 3rd year in doing that, and it's really worked out well to have that partnership. And then we move around to different Main Street organizations, different places every year. This year, we're going to be handling the administration a little bit more than in the past because we actually are going to be in Tallahassee this coming year. So next July, I hope you all can be here. Maybe we can schedule your meeting around the same time and try to have you here for that. And it'll be like a 4-day conference, and it should be really incredible. And it's for the bicentennial. I felt like, if we're ever going to do this in Tallahassee, this is the year we should do it, because the bicentennial is occurring.
Can I add a little bit to that?
Sure.
It's been a great partnership to have both groups working together. As a sponsor and a practitioner, we love it because now we have like Florida Main Street, looking at Florida Historic Preservation Trust, and the commingling has been fantastic. I really think it keeps getting better and better. This year was a huge bump in participation in Ocala. They treated us really well, the city. I'm looking forward to see what you pull off here from Tallahassee next year.
Here's a bottle of water.
Well, we see a lot of history in Tallahassee, and I'm really excited to have it here in our backyard. And I think, we've got the staff here to help us. And we have a Main Street here in Tallahassee, but it consists of one person who is also the Downtown Improvement Authority board. So we are going to take over more of that, like, registration part with the Florida Trust's help. And more of that planning. Because the reason we use that local Main Street to do a lot of the sort of on-the-ground planning, and since we're here this time, it'll be a little bit easier to know where all the...
And we'll do something in Mission St. Louis, yes? We'll have
we've actually talked about doing the awards ceremony at St. Louis.
That site is so cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a world-class site.
Right?
Yeah.
It's really a top site.
Yeah, and perhaps the opening reception at the Grove and,
The
you know,
Grove.
really utilizing a lot of our sites that we have
I
here.
love it.
Right.
Doing tours, and I think there's opportunity too to do like, you know, half-day trips out to Havana and Quincy and Monticello and see, you know, there's little towns that have really taken advantage of the Main Street program too. Yeah. Let's see. And then finally, we have some exciting news, which I'll let Ryan talk about later, is we received our boat, our vessel for, underwater archaeology, so we've actually taken delivery of that, which is really exciting. And then today, as you heard, Katie Miar is out this week, so we've got, Ryan Duggins and Sam Wilford here that will kind of fill in for her when her time on the agenda comes. So, does anybody have any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have, we go to our, business items. Number one is the review of public request for naming, a state facility, and FDLE is here. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Chair Ben,
Good morning.
and members of the commission. I'm Derek Miller, Director of Legislative Affairs, for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. On behalf of Commissioner Glass, I appreciate the opportunity to come before the Historical Commission to request the renaming of our Miami Regional Operations Center after the late Special Agent Jose Perez. Special Perez died in a tragic vehicle crash last year while on duty. It was actually in the month of August. His loss echoed through the ranks of FDLE as well as other law enforcement agencies. He served during a career that included 30 years in law enforcement with several agencies. Agent Perez was admired as a mentor and a friend. Prior to joining FDLE, he served more than 26 years with the City of Miami Police Department, where he retired with the rank of Major in 2018. Agent Perez's law enforcement career included working with the Florida Department of Corrections Inspector General's Office as a sworn investigator, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission as a sworn officer, as acting police chief with the Village of El Portal Police Department, with the Florida Department of Health as a medical malpractice investigator, with the Attorney General's Office as a medical fraud investigator, and finally as FDLE Special Agent. In addition to his law enforcement career, Perez served more than 20 years in the United States military with stints in the U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Navy, U.S. Army National Guard, in both active and in reserve roles. His personnel file is filled with letters of commendation and appreciation for his dedication and excellence serving our country. Truly, this was a man dedicated to the principles of service to community, country, and one who deserved this honor. Madam Chairwoman and Commission members, I humbly ask that you accept our request to name our Miami Regional Operations Center the Jose Antonio Perez Building. Thank you very much for your kind consideration. I can answer any questions.
Yes, Steve.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make the motion to accept, the request.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Gosh, you hate it. Yes, please.
Is this a historic, why are we involved in the naming of this building?
Oh, that's part of our mission.
Okay.
We just haven't done
Any
it.
building named in the state of Florida anywhere?
Well,
Or
facility.
any
State
state
building,
facility?
yeah,
All right.
yeah, or denaming.
Hey, if I got past the University of Miami, you know, recommendation here, you know, I think
We're
we're,
able to overlook that.
right.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, right, but it is part of our responsibility, yeah.
It's easier than going to the legislature and getting a bill passed.
On the agenda, but
Yeah.
It includes state parks also and roads, state-owned properties.
But not university.
Just the things I want to name after Judy Benz.
Oh, yeah, right, I can imagine. Yeah.
Being from Miami, I, remember this very, very well. I was actually, I had moved to Gainesville, but I was back down there when this happened, and was very, very serving officer. Always a sad situation.
Oh, you hate to see people retire and then die.
Oh, no.
I mean, God.
Always a very sad situation, but it was
Yeah.
clear.
So far, so good.
It was clear that
discussion or comments? All right, let's call all in favor of naming the, FDLE building in Miami, this, Jose Antonio Perez building, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Good. Well, Mr. Miller, you have our approval. You can go home and say, order the letters.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for coming.
You.
All right, now, Commissioner Copeland has been in charge, and several of you commissioners have been involved in special category grant, reviewing them, changing the guidelines on scoring. Yeah. You all should have a report, in your paperwork. Remind all of us who was on the committee, Kathleen, I forgot. I don't have a list.
It was a large subcommittee.
Yeah.
We had, Mr. Cortez, Cliff Smith, John Phelps, Michael Francis, Rick Gonzalez, and myself. Over the course of what seemed like speed meetings, we had 3 meetings, within just a couple weeks. It worked out really, really well because it kept us on task.
Right.
By not having too much time in between the meetings. And between those meetings, I also worked additionally with staff. And I really want to thank Eric Case and Dr. Tomlinson especially for just assisting with helping doing the minutes and brainstorming on some of these things. So I hope that you've kind of taken a look already through the different meeting minutes that we did. I don't really want to belabor that, but I will go in the last page of your packet is the proposed recommendations. And for those of us who have been scoring these special category grants for a while, we've all had issues over the years and just being frustrated with not really being able to score on things that we felt were very important to be able to score on, or not really sure where we should be scoring on certain things, and we really wanted to make it fair, not just for the big projects that we always see, but also for the museum exhibits that come in on applications, and of course the archaeological projects. And we just wanted to make sure everybody got a fair shot at the money. And we know that money changes from year to year, but we wanted to make it a fair process. And we also really wanted to make sure that the applicants who actually take the time to do a good application are rewarded for such. So we came up with, everybody liked the 100-point scale. So we wanted to keep the 100-point scale, but we've redone the criteria to 3 major categories. The historic significance is now the most weighted criteria. And this now says the historic significance, meaning beyond just the age of a resource, what is the relative importance of the property or site in connection with prehistory or historical events, developments, or individuals? This may also refer to the relative importance of the information that forms the basis of a proposed museum exhibit or archaeological project. And so we felt like by giving this the most weighted part of the pie, that, it's really up to the applicant to tell us why this is such a significant resource. Criteria 2 is sort of how we combined some of the other smaller categories that we used to score on. Now, community impact, need, and the educational potential. So this includes public good, including accessibility. What is the educational potential, the economic impact, or any other public benefit resulting from your proposed project? This also covers the need for the proposed project or activity as it relates to the preservation of the history of Florida and/or its historical and archaeological resources. This may also refer to the need to update outdated information and/or design of a museum exhibit. So we wanted to make sure our language in the criteria really helps spur the applicant to understand where they're supposed to explain different parts to us. And this is also the criteria where the compatibility with statewide historic preservation priorities can be discussed. Every year, the division comes up with new statewide preservation priorities. Sometimes it may be related to Florida Main Street communities. Sometimes it may be related to disaster, after a disaster, and we're focusing on a certain area of the state. So those priorities change annually, and if a project happens to really focus on one of those priorities, this would be the criteria they would explain that in. And that's worth 30 points. And the last criteria is also worth 30 points, and this is the organization, administration, and the technical ability. So is there enough administrative capability, not only just in order to accomplish and produce a decent application, but there's a whole lot of grant reporting that has to be done throughout the year and making sure you're staying on top of the financials and the timelines of what you said you were going to do. So do you have enough staffing and financial resources adequate to complete your proposed project and meet that administrative requirement? This is also where the quality of the application falls in, including the availability of professional and technical services required to carry out the proposed project, and the appropriateness of this project. Is the scope of work appropriate? Is the budget appropriate? And the timeline related to the property, site, resources, collections, or information that forms the basis of the proposed project. Beyond the actual criteria that we looked at, we also looked at the rest of the special category program to see if everything else was lining up for today's construction needs and costs. And so our other recommendations that came from the group is we would like to increase the grant request amount maximum to $1 million and decrease the required match to 50%. And because of that, you then need to, there's currently a 1.5 million cap on what any organization can receive over a 5-year period. So we want to increase that 5-year cap to $3 million. Does anybody have any questions?
I was set, but I'll just be quiet until someone else goes through.
Just a clarification, when you say decrease the required match to 50%, that 50% of 1 million, say we got a full request, so it'd be 500,000?
50% of what they're asking for.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Now these, when I looked at these, it's very different than what we have now. We can think in our minds that a month from now, we have to deal with,
Yes, there's no way that we'll be able to.
No.
Yeah.
It's not for this round.
That's right.
That's why one of my questions.
No.
It's not for this round.
It's for next year.
For next
Right, and then my other question, is this statutory rule, or is this a policy that
Guidelines. Well, it would
You can do.
be incorporated, the guidelines are incorporated into rules, so
Right.
that's why it will
So
be
you have to
next
make a
year,
new
so
rule?
we'll-
Right,
Okay.
that's right.
perfect?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, now,
We don't need to make it.
Not a new rule, amend the,
You have to amend, you
Yeah.
have to go through the rulemaking process in some form or fashion,
Yes,
correct? Which
correct.
is
Which we're doing
notifying it
anyway.
and all that bureaucracy.
Right.
Okay.
My advisor doesn't agree. Tell me, what do you think?
No, these are guidelines that are on paper that are adopted by rule, by reference in rule.
Yeah.
So the rule doesn't have to change, the guidelines are still adopted by reference,
the
so.
rule itself, 1A39, language doesn't change, just the incorporated document changes, so the link to the incorporated document. But even changes to that has to go through the rulemaking
Okay,
process.
so that suggests we don't
Right.
actually have to go through a rule change. we have to go through maybe a reference within the rule
Right.
to the guidelines, to the updated guidelines.
It does require, we ran this question because
Through GC?
Commissioner Cortez asked this question during the committee, and GC said that it would, because it's incorporated by reference, it still requires the rulemaking process, even though the rule language itself isn't changing.
Even though I do like your, we don't need no thinking rules type of thought process.
Well, I read the rule, there's no other stuff in the rule.
Right.
Yeah, right, they just refer to them. Yeah.
But I really want to thank the fellow commissioners that were on these
Yes.
calls. It was very interesting to work through that process and kind of see what everybody thought, because everybody had a little bit different take on how this program should work and how do we make it more efficient and fair to the applicant. So thank all of you for being on that and taking the time to do so.
The money change is critical. I mean, all the projects we're working on, all of them are short. I mean, $500,000 used to be a lot of money, very little money these days, so thank you. And thank you for keeping the match at $500,000.
Yeah, the match is
Right,
crucial
that's really hard.
Being
So now it's like a
inclusive.
2-to-1 versus a 1-to-1, which is
That's right.
awesome.
That's right, right. Yes, Michael.
Just a kind of a friendly amendment, but we should start moving away from this word prehistory. It's history. And prehistory implies all kinds of things that.
I'm going to defer to the archaeologist
Right,
on that one.
it is an issue, and, archaeologists, this issue with colonialism and treating Native Americans as real people, and not saying that everything began when the Europeans arrived. I mean, all of that is implied in the word prehistory, that they couldn't read or write. It's not. Anyway, the point is that what people are using is they're trying to stop with the prehistory, and they're trying to, add either pre-contact with pre-European contact, or just saying the history of indigenous people that were here, or Native American history, some other word that, and Native Americans still have a history. I mean, they're making history every day, just like we are, so,
This would be the time to change it.
yes, well, let me look at that sentence. Where is it?
Connection with prehistory or historical events.
We could say
Yeah.
Historical events.
Everything is
historical events, that's
I think
right. That's good, strike,
Good job, Tony.
just say
strike it.
historical events. Yes.
Less is more.
Right now, the world of archaeology is using them both. They're making the switch, and some people in the know are, the old timers don't like it. I'm gonna say what I wanna say, blah, blah, blah. But, I think it is, everyone has a history, and, the European, history is just shorter here. Good.
That's a good catch, Dr. Francis.
Right. Thank you. Now, I had a little, question on this, is that, let's say we're sitting down and we're gonna use these guidelines, to score. When I see these bullets for the criteria 2 and 3, I immediately divide them by, the points up. Like you could get, on criteria 2, or 3, you could get 10 points for each of those in my mind, or not. So we're really free to say if we're really impressed with their administrative capability and the quality of application, but we're not as impressed with appropriateness. How do we express that or just take it into our total points?
Well,
that?
that actually was fairly intentional to do the 3 bullets for the other 2 categories that
Okay.
were 30 points each.
Okay,
But
good,
we wanted to
good.
leave that up to the individual commissioner. If you wanted to look at it that way, that each were 10 points, but not all of us use the same kind of scoring
Right.
methods in our minds, so we wanted to leave that, open.
Yeah. But if you saw that there was a weakness in one of them, really weak, say criteria 3 or 2, then I would keep that part as a 0 and divide points up to the other 2, but it wouldn't express the fact that I'm worried about their appropriate or they're weak. right? Okay. We'll try it.
Madam Chair, and that's why it's so important that comments, I'm concerned about the comments, having to put a comment in, but it's really helpful too to staff when people call us and say, what was wrong with my application, why did I rank low, that we'll have something to give them, that feedback from you.
So we're still gonna have that if
Oh,
it's
yeah.
below a certain threshold. What's that threshold now, 80?
I thought it was 70, but
70.
it could be either, I mean, is it 80? Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Sure.
80, you have to score an average of 80 among all of your average scores
Right.
for funding. I don't think that's the score that the system requires you to put a comment in but I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure of that. That's not
yeah.
that requiring a comment is not in the rule. So.
It was part of like,
But it was a part of the computer
it was
program.
a part of the computer
system,
program.
Right, because, you know, if I scored something at 65, all of a sudden I'm
Yeah.
required to put a comment in.
But I'm not sure, because I don't score and I've never seen that pop up, what the exact number is that you have to provide a comment.
So what, are you doing anything about that?
I believe it was
I know-
70. I believe it was 70.
Okay.
Yeah, if you put less than 70, you should have no.
Think so?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's a little painful on us, but, you know.
Can be short.
And again, that doesn't exist in the guidelines.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so again, the application will be, yes, to the
Okay.
point of the rule, it will be incorporated into the guidelines.
There aren't many under 70, I mean, there are very few.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to get Alyssa and Angie's reaction to how this will affect the application itself.
well, and that's what I was hoping that Eric would talk, because I saw something in one of the earlier notes on one of the earlier meetings about staff's concern about, what was it? That we had some grantees that would be problematic in them actually getting done on time, or I just thought there was a staff concern, and I
There
wanted to make sure.
was, and that concern is that even right now, there's still some applicants that have not finished within the required time period. Because,
I think I know of one museum
they're
that's in
still
the state of Tallahassee.
within their contract because they asked for extension and extension and extension.
Right.
But the point is, some of these projects are so involved and so in-depth that they're taking a while to get done with construction timelines and that sort of thing. So, the initial concern was that, well, if we increase these project limits to $1 million, is that gonna make such a bigger project that we can't, but as we work through it, I think staff is okay with what we're doing because we worked with them. But the increased money doesn't necessarily mean a bigger project. It just means that's what stuff is costing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand that there is a certain amount of construction inflation right now with the inability of labor, material dislocation, and just generally inflation. Yeah, I've got that. I've seen it up close and personal.
And it's still.
I just wanna make sure from a staff perspective, we're not hamstringing them in some form or fashion. And that's what I'm gonna look for you and you to.
Yeah, Kathleen's comment is exactly it, is that, you know, we don't know until it happens what the result will be, right? So it could be that in a few years we come back to you and say, this $1 million is not working, it's too much, maybe we need to revisit it, but, you know, even right now with $500,000 projects, or even less than $500,000, we do have people. So we were just thinking, well, are they gonna are we gonna get like, stack up where they can't apply for grants until they close one, and so, you know, it's just something we'll deal with on the grant management side, but.
Okay, I mean, but, you know, from your perspective and Eric's perspective, you know, if you can give me a percentage of those people of, you know, is it 3%, 20%, or 50%? I mean, do you have any, just like a ballpark?
I mean, Eric could correct me, but I feel like 90% of projects go past 2 years already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Damned, okay.
Yeah.
90% go beyond the 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of my comments at the time, right? It's not realistic either. The other comment is change in scope. On several projects that we have that are, you know, with grants, the scope has changed, you know. We've got one building that had, mold, And so money that was gonna go for exterior, emergency, right, needs to be applied to take rid of the mold and refurbish it, right? And another one where, an addition has to be taken off, but the money and a new elevator was gonna be, but what we really need right now is to protect the building, because the windows are not there, and we need to do the windows, so that's changing scope, right? So, how do we deal with that? Does staff have the flexibility to deal with that now?
Yeah, we do that now.
Yeah, we do that now. We can't raise the amount of the grant
But
that
you
was
can shift
awarded, but as long as it's allowable, whatever new thing comes up that has to be dealt with,
You
can
modify.
adjust the scope of work and
Right.
budget as long as they are allowable and meet the Secretary of Interior standards of what they wanna do.
And they won't lose their money, they can use it, shift it for that. Oh,
Yes.
beautiful, that's
Right,
wonderful.
with permission, but yes.
With
Yeah.
permission.
Right.
Oh, no, of course.
Right, right. Yes, Michael.
I'm still a little bit unsettled about the smaller categories. You know, you think of this past year, 8.4 million, and you think of if we bump this to $1 million, 8.4 million was a banner year, right? We take the last 10.
No, year before was a banner year.
16.
Was it 16?
Yes.
Okay. So 8.4 is roughly, if we take the last 5 or 6 years, are we kind of in that ballpark or less?
Well, for 3 years, we didn't get a nickel.
Right, I mean, you know,
Right.
let's appreciate
So,
the wonder
yeah,
of
right.
the federal government dropping a whole bunch of money in,
Right.
and the economy
Right.
continuing
Say
to
you
work.
have, 8 really, really good projects, places like big institutions that won't find it difficult to get the $500,000 match. What is in place that protects those 50,000, 40,000, 25,000, which I'm just worried that the big projects are gonna take up everything. If they're prioritized first, then that money's gonna be
They're not.
We discussed that, and they're not necessarily prioritized first, because this commission is looking at the validity of the project, not,
The amount requested, to me, does not determine where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Right, that's right.
It doesn't, but my guess is those who have a $500,000 match, that's just my guess. I've only been on one of these
They could just
before.
get more
They'll be-
money, that's all. And the ones that have a, $50,000 match, they just get less, because they can afford that much match, that's all.
Well, right now, there is a one-to-one match, so if you have to come up with 500,000 to get
Right.
a $500,000 grant anyway. So, but I will say, if you look at, I don't have an exact number or percent, but if you look at the last several years, since we, went to one-to-one match, which was about 4 or 5 years ago, small projects that are under 100,000 are always in the top 10 or 20. So I think it has to do with how you all score it, how
Right.
you view the project and score the projects that you think are worthy, which could particularly help. I know Commissioner Gonzalez always points out, this is a great project in a small Main Street community. It's really important to the community. There's all kinds of factors that I think the commission takes into account that don't have to do with the amount of money or the size of the project.
Exactly.
They're requesting.
And we're not messing with the rural county.
We have the red eye, we have the red eye.
Okay, just
They
wanna
still
make
get a
sure.
waiver to 25%.
That red eye is the best thing you guys ever
Yeah.
invented, by the way, for small
Yeah.
communities.
And then there's some big projects that are just over the top, it doesn't need to be done, we don't like the way it's organized, they've had, too many outstanding, yada, yada, yada. So-
Sure.
Right, so don't worry about the number, Michael.
and
I'll continue to worry, and then we'll see how they play out.
Well, adding, we were particularly, we wanted to make sure that the appropriateness of the scope of work was featured in one of these criteria, because let's say you are a bigger organization going for big money. Well, if part of your big money means that you plan on ripping out all the original historic windows, or
Sure.
something that's not so appropriate, now you can score it on that. Or I can score it on that. But I would deem that not an appropriate use of the grant money.
Sure.
So you have the ability to balance, what they're asking for money-wise and what they're proposing, and is that money an appropriate use?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
so the commission doesn't find itself in the same circumstances 5 years from now as it has been, as it is today? the appetite for an escalator clause in the upper amount, and Rick could possibly comment on what would be an appropriate amount connected with some other index that would allow us to increase that number year by year.
Well, over the years, it has increased, you know, but it's always been kind of jumps, not escalator.
You mean going from $500,000 to $1 million?
Mm-hmm.
Or tying it to CPI or something like that?
Well, whatever I was gonna ask Rick if there's a building index of some kind that would make more sense.
We don't give estimates anymore. We just say, all right, I'll throw a dart over there, another one over there, because it's really a crapshoot right now. It's, the last 3 years with COVID, it's a new world, and everybody's moving to Florida, so it's kinda.
Well, actually, they're moving to South Florida.
Well, they'll be here soon enough, I mean, trust me. But the cost.
We need to build a wall.
Right at legal.
Dude, that discussion has been around for a while.
Yeah.
The match is going to be then so $1 million, you have to give $500,000. What if you're applying for $300,000? That means you give $150,000?
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Because that helps the small groups, Michael.
Right.
They're also getting a break in raising money.
Dr. Ben?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point out that we have had that 50%, match
Mhm.
as far as,
In
I
the
think,
past.
like 5 years ago. It wasn't until there was an effort made, to sort of put us and cultural affairs sort of on the same plane, that moved up to a 1-to-1. So, I've discussed it through our chief of staff, and we'll have to see, you know, what exactly we can do of these recommendations, but that, it wasn't a no. So I feel good about the 50%
And is
going back.
cultural affairs at $1 million right now?
They're not at, I think they're still at 500. I think theirs is exactly the same as ours, 1-to-1
Right now.
up to 500,000
Right now.
for cultural facilities.
This is great. I hope we can get this done quick. Too bad we
Right.
can't get it done for September.
So now, what we, should do, once we're done with this discussion, then we should vote to approve or not approve. We put these recommendations up for a vote.
Yeah.
Then we hand it to you, and you see if you can run all the way to the finish line.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommendations.
I just have one more
Of the
question. before we
guidelines.
get
That's okay,
that.
we'll discuss after.
With the amendment, right? The language
Yes.
amendment?
Yes, with the
Right.
amendment suggested this morning.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, good. We got 3 seconds, that's great. Now, let's have some more discussion. John?
I would only urge, the staff, and I don't think this is something we need to vote on in connection with the proposal itself, because it's a technical question.
Uh-huh.
But I have found it, as going through these, applications as long as I have, I find it complicated to, sort out how the photographs are submitted. These are critical.
Yes.
And I would like to standardize whatever form the photographs are submitted in. Now, Angie didn't like that idea.
They are. People stop following.
It's not that I don't like the idea, because we already require them to submit, you know, in one document that is like, a file format that is easy to open and review, but they don't always do that. So I think from the grant, we ask them to do that in the RFI processes, but if we can't get them to do that format, we don't make them ineligible because just their photographs aren't in that format,
But
so.
should that reflect on the character of the application?
Yeah, I think that could.
Right.
Yeah,
Right, I mean, honestly, that is how
Can't
you
do what
choose
that
to
says,
judge
yeah, don't
something.
do it.
Yeah, I mean, it does have quality of the application is now specifically called out in that third
Right.
criteria, so anything that you see in the application that you think this is not well done or not well prepared or thought out, I mean, you could take that into consideration, I feel, under this new criteria.
If we did have an expectation such as PDF file, let's just choose one, JPEG, I don't care, as long as it's standard, then we could know whether they departed or didn't depart when we were reading the application itself.
I mean, we already, as I said, staff already asked that in the RFI process, if any of the support materials that they can't open or are hard to open, not just the photographs. So, I mean, you know that we do that, and if they don't fix it, then that is something you could consider.
Yeah, it's on them.
Okay.
Anything else, Steve?
I just had, this one was for Kathleen, and this may have fallen by the wayside, but I saw it in the meeting notes of one of the meetings, is that there was some thought process of rewarding, counties that had better historical guidelines or preservation standards than others.
Well, no, I just thought that,
And I just wanted, that's not a part of this final.
right.
Okay.
Properties that are actually protected under some kind of local ordinance.
Right.
If there was a way to be able to score them higher, but that didn't make it into the final.
Okay, perfect, that's, I'm fine, I'm ready to support this.
Any other discussion?
I had a question.
Yes.
I'm curious for the people who have been reviewing these, how economic impact rates on here, and it's a sub-point of a sub-point, but it seems to me that, $16 million compared to how much gets spent on construction is pretty negligible. I'm not 100% clear on the relevance of economic impact to the mission of the commission, so how does that enter into the factor?
Well, it used to be real important when, in former times, it was a big thing. It has, I agree, we all agree with you that it's not as important. But some will have an economic impact, and it's interesting to see, what that estimate is. I think that is also fudged a lot, I do. But I'm just speaking my personal opinion. I don't have any data for that, but I go, yeah, right.
We did
The
have
economic impact used to be its own category.
Right, yeah, right.
And that's why we got rid of that.
We
Yeah.
diminished it a little bit.
Right.
Because,
Now it's a point of a sub-point.
Right,
Right.
right. Yeah, that
because
makes sense.
people were coming up with all kinds of interesting economic.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, and then on top of that, you have archaeological expeditions, for example. What impact do they have, if any?
Right.
Economic impact.
Right, and I don't want an archaeological dig to have a hot dog stand just so.
Here,
here.
I think it's still yeah, it's not a point, it's still in there. It's not, there's still a question about economic impact.
It is, we need cold water
Well,
billing.
years ago, we had, when Scott was a governor, the timing was unbelievable. The University of Florida and the Florida Trust put out a report. And it was, remember, it said for every dollar, it impacted $8 of job
Right,
creation.
multiplier.
It was great. I mean, first meeting with Scott, we presented the report to him, he was like, wow, it's part of my jobs, right? He was all about jobs, you know?
Right.
We need to update, we really need to update that. That came up at the conference, right, at the Palms conference, that's a tool that was very helpful, but it's dated, right? That was 12 years ago when
Right.
Scott was governor, right? So, we need to get UF and the Florida Trust and maybe the state to update those, economic reports, because they're really important.
There was some work done in our, disaster preparedness
Yes.
documents on economics, so I think what we need to do is visit that and sort of look at that more closely and see if there's anything else we need beyond that. There was some things done in there.
All right. Any other discussion?
Just
Okay,
want
all
to
in
thank
favor?
Kathleen, for all her efforts on this committee. She really pulled everything together for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
We need more, right?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Good. It carries unanimously. Kathleen, I personally and officially want to thank you for this. I know it's like herding cats, I do know that. But you as the chair and 5 of commissioners on it, I think it was important to have a relatively large committee. That's the majority of this committee. And I think it's going to be a bit of a new day. And now, Madam Director, you've got the ball.
All right, well, actually, our Assistant Director, Angie Tomlinson, is going to, I believe, present
The next ball
The next
on
ball.
the agenda.
You mean the grant ball? Yes, we will take that.
I mean,
We'll
this,
take
what we
that
just passed.
for the, I'm on to the next thing on the agenda, so.
Let's see, now, do we want to take a break, or we want to go one more point?
Let's go one more point.
Let's go one more point, okay, all right.
I've got a root canal at 1:30.
Oh, good, now, you probably do.
Right.
To monuments and memorials, and, Angie, you're gonna take the ball?
Sure, I will. This may feel like a root canal too, I'm not sure.
I've had a mouthful.
Yeah, so at our last Historic Commission meeting, Commissioner Cortez made a motion that we just get an overview of what the current statutory law is. So that's the point of this, is just to tell you, because there's been some, bills passed in the last couple of, sessions, and So this is really just an overview, but I'm sure it will lead to discussion, about the memorial park. So just a background, the Historic Commission wasn't reviewing any of the monuments or memorials at the Capitol until 2014. That was when, the legislature passed a bill, Bill HB 731, that created a framework under which the Department of Management Services is the agency that oversees design and placement of memorials at the Capitol complex. And in doing so, they should consider or coordinate with DHR and consider recommendations of the Florida Historical Commission. So that was in 2014. So what that legislation specifically did was create a new section of Florida statute, Section 265111, that defined monument. So monument in that section, for purposes of that section, is a marker, statue, sculpture, plaque, or other artifice, including living plant material, placed in remembrance or recognition of a significant person or event in Florida history. That does not include our Florida historical markers, just other types of things. And they created the process for that, of getting that approved, which at the time was just DMS would approve that design and placement after recommendation from the Historical Commission. Okay, so in 2022, that approval process changed. The legislature passed HB 5301, which amended 265111 to say no longer does DMS approve it. They're not the last stop. After DMS consults with the Florida Historical Commission, so you're still included in that 2022 change, DMS then takes that recommendation from you and also the work that they've done to get to that point on the design and placement to basically the cabinet, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House, or their designee. So that's who they now go to after they meet with us, and they still manage the entire process, DMS does, but they do come to the commission for recommendations before they go to the cabinet and Senate President and Speaker of the House. That original 2014 legislation also had a section in 265111 that said that DMS would, in consultation with the Florida Historical Commission, set aside an area of the Capitol complex to be a memorial garden, okay? So that changed in 2023 legislation, which is what Alyssa talked about a little bit earlier. So regarding the memorial garden, quote, memorial park now is defined, the legislature passed HB 2506 in 2023 that amended Section 281, which is where the Capitol complex is defined. So as Alyssa mentioned, part of that change of that section included extending the Capitol complex to include the R.A. Gray and the Elliott Building, but it also defined Memorial Park statutorily. So the Memorial Park at the Capitol complex is now defined as the portion of the Capitol complex existing between and including the Elliott Building and Holland Building within an area bounded by and including Monroe Street, Gaines Street, Calhoun Street, and Pensacola Street. So the Memorial Park is the area we were discussing when Alyssa spoke, that is the other side of, if I'm understanding that code boundary, the other side across the street from the historic Capitol.
Far away.
Can you bring it up on Google Earth?
Text Jeremy, he might be able to.
Do we have any webinars on that?
It just may help, but
I don't know if,
Yeah,
I don't wanna get you off your game.
okay,
but we're not sharing,
yeah.
we're not sharing,
Jeremy's sharing, okay.
Well,
Anyway, but to summarize all of that, so 2014 was when the legislature included the FHC in looking at monuments and memorials at the Capitol complex. In 2022, they added in this additional group, I guess you might call it a committee or entity, that includes designees of the cabinet members and the speaker and the Senate president. And then this year, they defined statutorily, the legislature defined what the Memorial Park as a Capitol complex was. All that to say, though, the commission is, FHC is still involved because DMS still, pursuant to 265.111, still has to come to you all for a recommendation on the design and placement.
And when did it come into play that they just, ignore our recommendations?
Well, I don't think that's,
What- what-
I don't think that's in statute.
That's inherent in the word recommendation.
It says consult. It
Yes.
didn't say
Yes.
approve, it said consult.
Right.
And I will say, just to give you a little more background, especially for the members who haven't been on the commission until more recently, since 2014, the commission has reviewed, 5 memorials. The POW MIA Chair of Honor and POW MIA Vietnam Veterans Bracelet Memorial, those have been brought before you. The Dozier School for Boys Memorial, the Slavery Memorial, and the Holocaust Memorial was most recent.
What about the Fireman's Memorial?
That was not,
That was
that was pre-2014. I'm not sure when it was placed, but I think probably the design and
Okay, I know
placement were
exactly.
decided.
I know exactly, it's the reason
Why this
I helped to write the bill in 2014.
Right.
Because of this intrusion
Right.
that was done.
Couldn't believe it.
The cabinet actually approved that. Okay? And
Okay.
so you have people approving stuff all over the place,
Right.
and there was no logic to it. And while I was director of the Historic Capitol, they just dropped a memorial on top, on the grounds of the Historic Capitol with no approval at all.
It would just show up one day.
I'm sorry?
It would just show up.
showed
They raised the money, find the builder.
It just showed up.
We call that flop
Now,
architecture.
there's nothing wrong with the memorial, it just doesn't belong there.
Right, right.
And one of my concerns about the definition as it's now been described is the grounds of the Historic Capitol now a part of that memorial park and subject, or can monuments, in addition to what's already on there, be placed on the grounds of the Historic Capitol? I hope not. There's only one on there now, except for this one that was later. Tony?
Yes, so a couple things based on, context. I think the extension of the Capitol complex was more of a public safety thing
Yeah.
than it was, anything to do with monuments or memorials necessarily. So encompassing more of downtown so that they can have Capitol Police and not rely on Tallahassee PD. That's a separate issue other than our mission. And then what's the statutory citation for that monument park? I mean, I see.
Oh, it's in, well, it's the chapter law right now, it's not in statute.
Okay.
The Memorial Park, it's chapter 2023-242.
Okay.
And that section amends, it will be in 281.01.
Okay.
And then one other thing, just to bring to your attention on this, this update, the 2023 legislature also passed a new memorial.
Right.
So this will at some point be coming to you. It is the Florida Space Exploration Monument. And that one is interesting because that chapter law and, actually requires DMS to develop a plan for the placement, design, and cost of the monument, including dates for a design contest that they're gonna hold for that monument, and a time frame for a committee to review and select the design. And that plan is due by July 1, 2024 to the governor, president, and speaker. So you're probably gonna see that soon because if DMS is on a timeline for that, then they're probably gonna come to us, just putting that on your radar.
Has DMS put a panel together for that yet? It's gonna be handled by Space Florida, you don't know?
Well, they're gonna want a big old rocket, you know that.
That's gonna be the spookiest, UFO type memorial
Yeah, big rocket.
that will be dated before it gets installed.
Oh, well, but I'm glad to know the Fireman Memorial caused this to,
Well, I mean, and who's gonna stand up to that, though?
well, that's the point.
I mean, let's, you know, come on.
Fireman, no one.
Well, I mean, you know,
That's
come
the
on.
point. It's how it was done and where it is, that's all.
Dude, it's one of my favorite things is like when kids stay at the Capitol and you see like 39-year-olds just climbing all over that thing. It's just one of my favorite things.
Where is it?
Well,
Right in the middle of Capitol,
thank
right
you,
in the
Thomas.
courtyard.
Thank you for
Yeah.
starting this organization ball rolling. Oh, that's right.
I still worry about, how this is being
It's right there.
reconciled with the original
Round thing.
plan for the renovation of the Capitol complex, which included the plaza behind the Senate office building and also the House side, the memorials. That was supposed to be the Memorial Garden area.
Right.
Right, but that policy changed.
I understand.
I don't know when that, I mean, I was,
That's what I'm saying.
that policy changed when,
Reconciled.
Some smoke-filled room.
well, I would argue, like, one governor went off to US Senate and a new governor came in.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
are the Capitol complex plazas on the House and Senate side still available as monument sites? I think they would make lovely sites, frankly, in certain kinds of monuments.
certain kind.
And they were actually built to withstand certain weight monuments.
Boy, that
in different
farm is
areas,
a heavy
you may
one,
recall.
Right.
So I hope those are not lost as options. Future memorials, because they're perfectly appropriate.
Right.
I think that may change in a new gubernatorial, I don't know. My fear is that we are gonna be putting, let's say, maybe monuments that should be paired together will get placed in different areas.
I don't know.
See, there are,
Well, I mean, so, let's be clear.
Yeah.
We're gonna put the Holocaust monument somewhere.
Off the street, right.
And then we're gonna put the slavery memorial not in the same place, or not in, we're not gonna put it across Monroe at the Memorial Park, and we're gonna put one closer to the Capitol?
Well, we can
I just
have a
think that
session
is
to make a recommendation.
Right.
That's right, that's
And
what we can do.
I have put that in writing to DMS, because I'm just, hey, let's not shoot ourselves in the foot here,
Yeah.
but we shall see.
Okay, so that's as clear as mud, but we got it.
well,
Thank you, Angie.
I was going to say,
You're welcome.
back in the early seventies,
Yeah.
when the Capitol complex was under construction, there was a Capitol Commission that made decisions about these kinds of things. It had real authority by statute. And that was somehow deauthorized or repealed. Since then, it has been just total chaos.
We don't have an architect of the Capitol office here, like in DC? What a shame.
We should. We should.
And they used to come to
that's
our
the
architect,
lifeblood.
which has been another thing that we
Oh, we don't have that architect either. No architect.
One of my favorite pictures that we found in, like, the City of Tallahassee Growth Management were pictures of the Capitol complex from the sixties. And there's one that we have, there's a station wagon parked right up close to the old Capitol. Just kind of like, it's on the grass, there it is,
The original design for the new Capitol complex would have diverted all the traffic in front of the historic Capitol. That intersection of Monroe Street and Appalachia went away.
Oh, my goodness.
It did. It went away. It didn't exist. And so all of this would have made a lot more sense
Yeah.
without that intersection.
Yeah. Oh, well,
That's.
history is what it is.
Legislating is never over.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thank you, Angie. Any other discussion? Let's take a little break. Let's see, it's 10:54. Let's come back about 11, 15 minutes.
Can we get back in the building?
I don't know. That's up to the staff.
We'll make sure, we're not allowed to leave that door unlocked, so we'll make sure somebody's out there.
Is that a security concern?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
topic, which is interesting, is, on the, grant-funded archaeology. There's some issues that have come up, and, Alyssa wants to, discuss it and throw some suggestions out.
Sure. So,
You have a handout?
I don't have a handout for you. I don't want to get too in the weeds on it. I want to work more with Dr. Benz and maybe, Dr. Smith, if I could do that. Dr. Smith, I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to talk with you this week. But we've had a couple of circumstances to come up, with the archaeological projects. Not specifically, well, one specifically special category. Another one was a federal grant that we received through the National Park Service, which we were managing, and human remains were found on the site and, caused basically for the grant to end up being canceled, through that process. And some of that had to do with the National Park Service and their, Section 106, federal consultation that they did with the tribes, and the tribe's feeling of not being informed on some things. But I don't want to ever end up in a circumstance where with a state grant that we are put in that circumstance. So I think that there may be some language that, could be included to, protect sites that have human remains present, that they, either we restrict the work that they're doing on those sites or only allow for protection of those sites and have our staff be very involved. Also, we've talked about having, a research design, and we could put some parameters on that if it's a short one, 3 to 5 pages even, that's included with the grant application, so that staff can be more involved in, reviewing those projects ahead of time. And I've gotten commitments from Bureau of Archaeological Research that they want to be more involved in that process, ahead of time and make sure that, the things that we're doing are permittable. If it's on state lands, especially if there's gonna require a 1A32 permit, that those are permittable, and that going into the grant application ranking. The other circumstance that has come up does have to do with the 1A32 permits. University of West Florida, as Dr. Benz knows, had planned a field school for this past summer, and it was to be on Spanish shipwreck. And some of the new things that have come up are, the Second Military Craft Act, which is not a new law, but, based on some decisions we had recently, through a lawsuit and the French government, that has come to a head. And so the process for allowing work on one of those wrecks is that there has to be, the Navy has to approve of that occurring. So University of Florida did, once they found this out, they did a good job. They went to Spanish, they got a letter, said they could do the work. Well, we went to the Navy, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been more involved in this, but the Navy then said, no, the consultation needs to occur from the state of Florida to the Spanish government. So by the time all this happened, and by the time we determined, now I guess the field school was over as of last week, and couldn't occur. So we want to try to head off some of these circumstances. It's just a new thing that has come up. I mean, it's not new, but it's something that has newly affected our grants. And so we'll be looking into whether or not we can extend that grant, possibly have the field school paid for in the fall or next summer. But these are some things that we just really, I feel like, need to put some more language in our grant guidelines to kind of address specifically these two circumstances. The other thing is that we have been allowing grant work, archaeological projects in our small matching grant program that have to do with site-specific projects. And the way it's written, and Angie, correct me if I'm wrong, it's written really where those are more for survey. And I don't know if it's just mission creep, and there's sort of been people applying and nobody kind of realized, but we've also talked about maybe putting all of those site-specific projects over into special category, no matter what that cost is. Now, I expect that will make some people upset, because if they're in small matching and they are targeting ready counties to do those projects, so they wouldn't have to have a match, then now if they're thrown into the special category system, then they would be required to have that 50% match.
25 is ready.
25 if they're in a ready area, but they would have to have some match. So that's something that we've considered. Back when many millennia ago, when I managed grants and supervised the grants program, and the small matching grants did allow, we had development in the small matching grants, and that was where the site-specific archaeology lived within the development. So I think the confusion happened when all the development projects got moved over the special category. I think those archaeology ones kind of got left and got considered a survey when they really should have been maybe moved as well. So I'm open to hearing all the discussion that you might, or concerns that you might have on these issues.
The only concern that I would have, or at least something that I would hope that you would do, is talk with the people that, I guess, I'm not sure if there's a archaeological group or association or school, maybe pitch some of that to them and let's see how much blowback, this will cost.
Well, I think there are some very specific organizations that are applying, like land.
Are they gaming the system, or are they?
I don't think they're gaming the system.
No.
I don't think they're gaming the system. I do think some of the projects that are in small matching grants right now that are site specific, those are people who are seeking out projects who are in ready communities and who are receiving a salary from the work that they're doing there.
Okay.
So it's not wrong. There's not anything against that.
Does it go against the spirit of it, as you would think?
I don't want to go that far. I don't think that's necessarily the case. It's just a matter of, is it appropriate to have it being in a survey category or not?
Yeah, survey in archaeology means finding sites, finding them, recording them, getting minimal information, but the primary purpose is to find sites. You don't know how good of a site it is, how deep it is, how many cultures are represented on that site, and that's what survey is. And the second phase of 3 is testing. And then you'll have a site-specific list of sites that probably warrant further work, but you don't know. You've got to do some limited excavation. And then the third is major excavation. If you want to go into phase 3 and do a major excavation, then that always comes to us as special category grants. But those testing projects have been in the small match, and it's not a survey. It's more than a survey. It involves excavation. And so I don't have any problem with that. I know that goes on. Early in my career, I chased money, and anywhere, to help with my salary. I wasn't on a full salary. But on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you do work and you're eligible and all of that.
Yeah.
But we need to stick with what projects go where in our grant category. That's all. And they can chase money in special category. It's easy if they can chase money in survey and plan or small matching.
And I don't know if there's any discussion further you want to have about Second Military Craft Act or about the human remains issue.
Yeah, there are very few organizations that do shipwreck archaeology. There are a few, but you can count them on one hand, really. And I want to say the rules have kind of changed, and they've caught this project right in the headlights. And universities run field schools. Usually every year, they either don't do it or they do it pretty regularly. And when you write a grant for a shipwreck excavation, you kind of plan your field school with hope, especially after you get it, then you plan it. But the problem is you can't go on a shipwreck without the right permission. And I agree with that. And the thing that happened was that a private treasure hunting company found one of Rabeau's shipwrecks off of Cape Canaveral, and it had wonderful things in it. One of those columns that he brought over in 1562 to plant here in what is North America, to claim area around Jacksonville and area around South Carolina for France. And it was in state waters. And so they wanted to do excavation of it and sell it or whatever they do with those things. And so they had a big to-do about that. I think there was a lawsuit.
It's still in lawsuit right now.
Yeah, but basically France said, we still own that. We never abandoned that shipwreck. That's still ours. It's just in your state waters.
Unbelievable.
Spain did the same thing. It's ours. We get to decide what happens to our shipwrecks. That's our goal, that's our column, that's our this, that's our that. And that is kind of, new. It depends on whose waters it in. If you're in Jamaica, then you just pay a fee and they'll say you can have it. They gotta deal with Spain. Anyway,
How did Mel Fisher get away with it?
well, before the rules.
Yeah.
It was before the rules.
And the guys from Greenberg Traurig, you okay?
That's why we have the rules.
Yeah.
It's the Mel Fisher and the Atocha.
He has what's called,
Right.
admiralty arrest
Yep.
on there, and I don't, Brian knows more about that than I do, but,
We lost.
it's a whole different ballgame, and we
Oh.
do not permit those on
Yeah.
1A31.
Well, we had all the gold, then there was the split, and then it was just really messy, so it was something.
Could you just outline very briefly the permissions process? So the request needs to come from the U.S. Navy to Spain's Ministry of Culture?
I'm gonna ask Ryan to come up when.
Yeah, Ryan, come on up.
I can certainly address that now. So this is, or kind of the test case for implementation of the Constitutional Military Craft Act, federal legislation, first enacted in 2004, that provides really broad, far-reaching protections for U.S. military ships located internationally.
Oh, yeah.
But that protection also is extended to foreign military ships in U.S. waters.
Right.
And what we learned in consultation with U.S. Naval History Heritage Command, or the U.S. Navy, is that, appropriate government-to-government consultation needs to occur not with the applicant to the Board of State Waters, but the permitting agency, i.e. DHR, with that foreign sovereign nation. And so what we are in the process of doing is kind of establishing those formal protocols and procedures with the Spanish Ministry of Culture, and it's moving along. Once that consultation is complete, then we'll be able to actually process that application.
And this would apply to wrecks, for example, in the St. Johns River as well?
Correct. Yes. Any sovereignty submerged waterways here in Florida that DHR has jurisdiction over, that we would otherwise be able to issue a 1A32 research permit for. If it is material subject to FCCA, that means we don't have title to it. That means 267 doesn't pertain to that shipwreck or scatter or whatnot. And so we would need that secondary authorization from the sovereign nation.
Now, if they're doing remote sensing, obviously it's not required. Like I know LAMP over in St. Augustine, they do a lot of remote sensing projects. If something like that, we wouldn't need it. But if they're actually digging and moving things.
Yep, there's a limit. You can hand fan just so much down there. They got it all organized. But anyway, at the end of the day, the grant clock started on July 1, and they still can't get in the water. And how do we deal with that? And that's what Alyssa is struggling with. And I think what is important to know is that the DHR has the ability to extend and not penalize the grantee, and that if there has been money expended, thinking or planning on, and like on the field school, how much did it cost to change gears? That they'll make them whole. And I think that's important. My people don't know that yet. And they'll be very happy to hear that. They'll be very relieved that their actual grant clock, even though it officially started ticking, it can tick longer.
That is my expectation.
That's
to
right.
allow that
Right.
to happen.
So, mostly it's not anybody's fault.
Right.
It's not our fault, it's not their fault, it's actually the French that brought this to bear, which is okay. I mean, I like the result and the way it's going to be. It's just that we got caught in the crossfire, and it will happen. I mean, shipwrecks are very, very touchy. Not only full of gold, but full of wonderful things, and there's a mystique about them, and they're dangerous to work. They're expensive to work. You don't get more expensive and dangerous archaeology. But that's just the way it is, and we know how to deal with that. That's why there is only a handful of organizations that do it. and put their students, in that kind of an environment. So anyway, that's what's caused this, and I just want to say that I have been really worrying for them. I mean, I'm retired, but, you know, I'm still there all the time, and I've just been worrying about it. So I appreciate the approach. It's very humane. They'll stop being nervous.
Thank you. Any other discussion? So if you do eventually see some, and we'll let you see the edits, you'll eventually see the rule changes that are going to occur, but when you see those in there, I just didn't want you to be surprised, and it's kind of things that never came up before.
Right.
Just quickly, Judy, besides LAMP and UWF, is there anybody else in the state who's doing underwater archaeology?
Not in the state. East Carolina, up in North Carolina is doing it, Texas A&M, that's
in the
it.
state, that's it?
University of Miami has a small.
University of Miami has a small one.
Small program.
I mean, just
There you
thinking
go.
about, this sounds really cumbersome.
Oh,
To
it is.
go to the Navy and
It
then go to the Spain's Ministry of Culture and then get the permits. This sounds like a nightmare process.
It's not.
Why couldn't we think about an MOU with the limited institutions that actually do underwater archaeology and then circumvent that?
I mean, that could be on the table. It could also be a letter that says you have permission to do it for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's
Yeah.
not project
Right.
specific. We really don't know yet until we
And
get
then,
all our
if you've been a good boy or girl, then
That's
you
right.
can get it renewed. If
That's
you've been
right.
bad, then you
Yeah.
don't get to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But we talked about that too, Melissa and I did, that, getting this is so cumbersome, maybe we can get it, as you develop this, you can talk with the right people that say, well, maybe you could get it, for several years, or for an institution that, if they're good, they'll renew. That's right. What Spain really wants is, reports and copies of newspaper articles and the kinds of products that we have, exhibits. They love exhibits, because, you know, Spanish history in the United States, especially in the East, has been largely forgotten. It's not on anybody's radar. Everybody thinks we started with the British. Well, we didn't. And that is a big surprise. And they want to promote that. Don't forget, Spain was very important, especially in Florida.
And we've had a couple of visits with them over the last
Yeah.
few months, and I'm going to talk to you, Dr. Francis. We're working on a exhibit with the City of St. Augustine and the Spanish Ministry of Culture to be particularly in the visitor center in St. Augustine, so they want to borrow our artifacts from our collection, to display, put that in next year.
Mike, isn't it true that Spain governed Florida longer than the U.S. has governed?
That's a fact. 1613, to 1821, it was Spanish, except for 18 years, right?
And I was encouraged that they don't want their artifacts back. That when they met with us and we toured them in the collections, and they said, you know, we think you're doing a good job, which
Right.
is great
What
for us.
they hate is the treasure hunters.
Yeah.
And blowing the sites up and, you know, robbing them. Stealing from Spain. Yeah.
Somebody online have a,
Who stole from Cuba?
John Brown?
Another island.
Now,
Please.
can I ask a question?
Colombia.
Hello, can I ask a question?
John Browning's on the line.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, we're talking about people wanting grants to work on shipwrecks. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Who wants a grant? Is that like the University of Florida or Florida State, or who would be wanting a grant to work on them if they didn't already have a permit?
University of West Florida actually has a grant now. So we're sort of in a conundrum about what to do, without them having a permit.
Now, doesn't St. Augustine have a grant to do some work also?
Yes, but I think theirs is just survey on top of the water. So if they're not touching anything underneath, I don't know, Eric, you know what that was for, off chance. But those are all things we need to consider going forward.
Now, we do have a number of permits now. They're working wrecks off to 1715, 1733 wrecks. Those are previously granted permits. Is that correct?
I think those are permits. Ryan, you want to address?
Those are actually historic contracts, so those are kind of legacy contracts tied to previously issued admiralty arrests.
Hale Fishers.
Yeah, this isn't dealing with those.
Right. Yeah, this wouldn't necessarily, apply to those.
Right.
They can't get grants.
Yeah, what about the French? You mentioned the wreck off the Cape that the French got involved with, Rabeau's wreck.
Yeah.
What is the status of that?
Yeah.
I think it has been appealed. I think was the last, thing that I heard. So the case was in favor of, I guess of us, but then it has been appealed.
But that is a person that already has a permit to search the site, and I guess I don't know. I'm confused on where they are. I know it was an individual had a permit, but then the French got involved, and where in the world is it now?
Well, it has to also do with that Sunken Military Craft Act and them not having permission to do the work, and then I think, not able to have a 1A31 because, the French are not, in support of that. So it's a similar issue, but that just is occurring outside of the grant process.
Yeah, those
For
are
today,
considered warships. Is that not correct? If they're a warship, the country that had the ships actually owns them.
That's right.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, but just for today's discussion, just, in dealing with the
I was
grant guidelines.
confused. That's all. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't know if Dr. Smith had anything to say. He's an archaeologist, so I don't know if he wanted to weigh in on anything.
Yeah, I would be happy to weigh in on this, but I figured you said you were going to be just reaching out and contacting us as far as language and questions, stuff like this. I think we wouldn't be doing grant funding unless it was a recognized institution and it was permittable. A foreign warship by an individual, I don't think would be grant funding.
Well, if the foreign government says that it's okay, I think that's the issue, is that we need that permission, for the institution to be able to dive on it.
Right, but this is a Florida institution.
Yes, like University of West Florida or LAMP or another university.
Right, and so the permitting has nothing to do with the grant, other than we may have to extend the grant timeline to allow for the permitting process.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, so that institution, they would get a 1A32 permit for state lands permit because of the type of institution they are.
Right.
And then the other type of permit is the 1A31 permit, which is the salvage permit. So that's a wholly different issue than what we're dealing with today.
Right, so, and the other question you had was about burials, unmarked human burials, is that correct?
Yes, that whether or not we want to try to stay away from sites that have no, or maybe we do write in that it's allowed if it has to do with protection or, encapsulation of those sites.
Well, I think survey and excavation are two different questions. If you're doing survey and you come upon unmarked human burials, then you have to deal with it through your office is the normal course.
Yes.
Right?
That would also stand, yeah. 872 Florida statute, if there's human remains just encountered that they didn't know was there before, they would deal with that in the normal process of the state archaeologist. But we're talking about, like, if there's a known human remains or recorded already, do we want to kind of steer clear of any of that work?
I would suggest you stay clear of any of that work. It's you just open up Pandora's box.
I agree. So you'll see some additional language that we'll put in related to that, and you'll certainly be able to weigh in on that. Maybe
Angie, you want to bring up something? No, I was just going to follow up, and Alyssa already said this, but we've talked to BAR already about, this is why we want to require the research design submitted with the application, and our archaeologists will review them and be able to provide comment before they go to you for review about what permits will be required. Does this impact, is it going to require international consultation?
So all of that and the way we're conceptualizing doing this is all gonna tie together in such a way that you will be able to review that application knowing what the future requirements would be for that type of project, because it's gonna be based on their research design, which should be included at the application.
Great. That's a good idea.
That was Katie's idea, so I won't take credit for that.
Well, it's really kind of how it works
Yeah.
in the world of grants with archaeological projects. You've got to have research done. If you don't, you don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
And in the past, I guess it used to be one of our first deliverables, that, was that, but then you don't really know going in, if
No,
you're gonna like it or not,
you have to know
so,
going in, right,
yeah,
yeah.
better to have it up
It
front.
requires more work and more thought, but, it's also a lot of money. Yeah. Okay,
Any other thoughts?
thank you,
Okay.
thank you. Dates for the upcoming meetings, I have no idea. Angie, do you?
Well, I will say the special category meeting, dates,
locked in.
they are locked in. They are September 27th and 28th.
Right.
That is not a business meeting, you're only gonna be reviewing applications, and then Ruben can talk about NR and meeting, the next one that would be tied to a business meeting, I think.
Yeah, that's in November. So, November 2nd is the next National Register Review Board meeting, which means that the next FHC meeting would be Friday, November 3rd. So usually your FHC meetings are tied, scheduled for the, National Register Review Board meetings. Those are usually the first Thursday of February, May, August, and November. So, if you
Say this month again, February?
February, May,
Uh-huh,
August, and November. So that's our quarterly schedule
all right.
for meetings.
First Friday, first Thursday.
First
Yeah,
Thursday
yeah,
for
so-
NRB and Friday for,
Yeah.
us, FHC.
So tentatively for 2024, that means you'd be looking at National Register on the 1st of February, that's the first Thursday, and then FHC on the 2nd of February. And then your May dates would be May 2nd would be National Register, and May 3rd would be the FHC. And then in August would be August 1st for National Register, August 2nd for FHC, and then you would end in November with November 7th as the National Register Review Board meeting, and it's November 8th as
Right.
your FHC.
You mentioned earlier you might want to adjust one of those meeting dates for the Main Street Conference next year.
Well, Main Street Conference is always in July.
The August.
Okay.
So they might want to
But they mentioned
Okay.
that
Yeah.
over, you might not have been.
Oh.
Or maybe
I
you
mean-
could keep the NR,
Yeah, these are all tentative
and,
dates.
yeah,
might work to have
So-
it closed.
yeah,
In a perfect world, if you just send us some calendar invites out, I think
Yeah.
that would be very helpful.
yeah. And also just special categories, usually always the last week or so of September, so.
Tony?
I'm gonna bring up, I think we should do a traveling roadshow at some point, more so because there's, I think, no reason why we shouldn't, have one of these meetings, whether February or May, do it in St. Augustine, and you go to the LAMP and, make it easier for John, Commissioner Hoyt to come over, rather than everyone having to come to Tallahassee all the time.
I would agree with you. I'm not really sure that our, how do you feel about
Got
that?
it in a while, I know Cultural Affairs does that with their folks, so.
Right.
Board of Architecture used to do it all the time.
Yeah, we could make
We
it
used to
happen.
do it all the
Maybe we
time,
should
too.
do one of our quarterly meetings.
I would prefer it not be February, because February 1st is the day the Union Bank is opening, so if you guys were here for that opening reception, I think
Well,
that
May
would
is a nice
be
month, not too hot.
But May,
My point is, you guys figure it out, send us some calendar invites.
we'll do.
St. Augustine will blow the budget.
Right, that would be the other thing, and then suddenly you're like, those of us who haven't traveled ever, will be happy. I would love to go to San Augustine on your time.
St.
Well, we
Augustine.
might,
would be great.
pick someplace. We might pick someplace like Ocala,
Yeah.
St.
a place we
Augustine
haven't been
sounds
yet.
great.
Right.
I like St. Augustine.
Right.
Okay, anyway, well, let's kick that around, with some ideas. I like that idea. Right?
This relates to what Angie was talking about, scheduling and so forth. Do we have a number of grant applications that have been submitted for the next round as yet? I noticed, I looked on the webpage before I came over and I didn't see anything listed.
And that's in my updates that are later. If
Oh, yeah.
I can do it now, or we can wait until it gets to me.
That's fine.
It's coming.
Yep.
Got it.
It's coming. Okay, so we finished that. Now we get to our committee reports and, the AR. What up? Right.
Hot seat.
Sorry, November 1st is a Friday, so is it that weekend or is it gonna be the following weekend?
Following,
You've been here for
7th and 8th.
This is fun for me. This is my first, SHC. I've known about this for years, and this is kind of a treat to get to be here, so, thank you. Well, we're both here for Katie, or on behalf of Katie. So I have a number of bullet points. I know some things about some of these things. I know a lot more about others. Hopefully I'll be able to, convey this appropriately. Update on public lands archaeology, PLA. The discovery phase in the Kearney Island case appears to be done. This is a living case that DHR is involved in. Two BR staff have already been deposed, for the damage assessment. And jury selection is moving forward on that. That's good progress. Paulette, who is the public land supervisor, has created an archaeological resource protection art webinar. This was formerly always an in-person training program designed for law enforcement. So now that it's digitally based, it should be a lot more accessible for law enforcement across the state.
I'm sorry, are you still planning on doing in-person trainings?
Yes, that's
Okay, perfect.
This is just an extra. Let's see, as part of its interagency team, Public Lands Archaeology has set 11 new applications for Florida Forever. This is the state's premier conservation land acquisition program. This evaluation, which included on-the-ground field visits, examined approximately 32,000 acres of proposed conservation land. Resulted in the recordation of several new sites, including pre-Columbian mound, turpentine resources, potentially related to the Rosewood Massacre. There was also 9 land management reviews, including state forests, state parks, and wildlife management areas across the state. Down in Cedar Key, Scrub State Reserve, Andrews Wildlife Management Area, Double Branch Bay Preserve, Anastasia State Park, Matanzas State Forest, Dunn's Creek State Park, and Florida Keys Wildlife and Environmental Area. And I think that is pretty much PLA's update. We can tag team so you don't have just one board.
Okay, so for my program, Collections Conservation, our new facility, we had our kick-off meetings with our architects. So Strawn Trout, the primary league architect for our facility. They're also contracted out with Samuel Anderson architects, who are kind of their kind of curation experts. And these guys have actually helped with Disney create their film archive, the Smithsonian. They're actually really good at making curation decisions. We're really excited about that. So we've had a kick-off meeting with them, and actually we've just renewed their initial programming guidelines for the facility. So it's exciting. So the hope is to get that finished, completely done by the end of 2026. So we're kind of that for new curation. We completed our annual audit, so we're required every year to do an audit of collections. So we completed that at the beginning of July. So we're required to look at every single object that's worth over $1,000 per statue, and then we take a random sample of 200 records in our database per museum standards and National Park Service. I'm happy to announce that we have nothing missing, so I'm not in trouble for that. That's good. As Alyssa mentioned, we are working with the Ministry of Culture for Spain and the City of St. Augustine on an exhibit featuring underwater archaeology. Katie and I went over to St. Augustine last week and had a look at the exhibit venue. It was fantastic. It should be prime for our artifacts, so we're really excited for that. We're currently waiting for the ministry to send us ideas of types of artifacts they want to showcase, and we'll be working on that and get that installed.
What exhibit space?
So it's at the business centre.
Oh, the business center?
Yeah.
Right across from the parking lot,
Yeah,
the
I
parking
know,
garage.
the historic building next to it.
Yeah, right.
We could schedule our board meeting over there when the
Yeah.
exhibit opens.
Yeah.
Represent.
We could represent. That's a good idea.
Alyssa, on the new facility for collections, if I remember right, did you get all the money you needed, or did you get enough money to build?
We got $14 million roughly, which we think will not get us the conservation lab. What I would love to see is for us to end up getting the shell of the con lab built in with the rest of the building, and then maybe we can go back and ask for the additional funds.
Your LBR this year is gonna ask for additional dollars?
Yes, there is a request. It depends on if it moves out of here and.
Right, I suppose that's the governor's office, right?
Yeah, but there is additional funds requested for the conservation facility. But, you know, with rising costs, we'll have to see exactly.
We do that all the time. That's a great methodology to get the shell. At least you got it. And then later you'll find the rest of the money.
You can build out over years?
Yeah.
I personally think it's easier for people to see the vision, you know?
That's all
They can
complete.
actually stand in the space, so that's what I would like, but there's a lot of different voices that have to come through. And a lot of, we're finding it's a very difficult space to build on. When that site was selected, it's great because it's not right next to the current facility, which will become the annex. And this will be the main building, but we are finding more archaeology there that we're either gonna have to dodge or mitigate, excavate fully. So, if you do go on the tour with me out later today, Jerry Lee, I don't know if he's out working today, but, there's some big holes out there, and the units that you'll see, where we're trying to get ahead of that before the architectural plan is finished.
Well, I would just urge, you know, while the money's here,
Yeah,
try to get as much as you possibly can.
Thank you for that. We're asking.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Anything else?
There is The underwater archaeology program, updates, we just completed, the final fieldwork component for our, DEP coastal zone management grant. This was focused on 2 coastal barrier islands here in the Gulf of Mexico, and we finalized work there at Dog Island, Franklin County. So we're going through, making the final report on that. We did find some really interesting, data in sediment cores, suggesting some previously freshwater areas, next to Dog Island that probably have very high potential for archaeological resources in there. What else? And Alyssa mentioned this at the start, just early this week took possession of our new research vessel. I can't stress how monumental this is for the program and for the state. This has been a long time coming, a very difficult process of making it happen. But this was actually funded via a 5-year grant we received, coastal zone management from DEP, that funded this, and it's going to be kind of a floating classroom. Platform for on-the-water law enforcement training and regulatory training for those agencies that have purview on Florida's sovereignty submerged land. So that's what the next couple of years of the grant is. Yes, sir.
Where is it? Is it on a trailer? Is it in the water?
It's on a trailer, and it's currently at the Governor Martin House. So it's not even seen the water yet. It doesn't have a bottom paint on it. It's still fresh from the factory.
Okay. So, is it a pontoon?
Yeah, it's a pontoon.
Is it a slide on the second deck?
Are you trying to take it out for a weekend?
I asked for one of those, and they said no. No, it's a brand new Parker 2520, so with an enclosed cabin to allow us to actually have our geophysical survey equipment and computers in a dry, not climate controlled environment.
Do we get to name it? We have some perks.
You know what? The name has yet to be determined.
I don't know if you'll all fit on the boat, but we can take some of it out.
Floating meat.
On the boat.
And what happened to the, didn't we have an old boat at one point in time that was like a drug running vessel, and then we had to replace an engine or something?
Yeah, we've got a number of old boats. We
We've disposed of those properly, is what I want to hear.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it went to surplus. It was actually a turtle smuggling vessel that they had removed some rather important structural elements in the hull to have room for contraband. But our other research vessel is actually another smuggling boat that is in much better shape.
Okay.
So that's good.
And we've got some smaller boats too, but this will be much larger than the others that we have had previously.
And I guess the final update, we have 2 new staff, happy to report. One is fresh out of grad school. She was our intern last year, and she's at FSU incredibly great. The second new hire out of private sector, he's got about 10 years of CRM experience, who's wanting to make the switch to public. So, all good.
Human remains for Katie. So we continue to respond to unmarked cases from our coastal expedition, law enforcement, private citizens. We're continuing to engage in that every month. The Miccosukee Tribe of Indians of Florida have a new travel historic preservation officer, so Jason Daniel. They started, he'll still be working with Kevin Donaldson and Edward Ordenstein at their historic preservation office. And we actually had a meeting with him a few weeks ago, and we reconfirmed our support from Miccosukee to continue through our cases. And Katie and I are also working with the Seminole Tribe of Florida on a request to help them identify split and shared museum collections across the state. This is a major issue which results in ancestors being split between multiple institutions, sometimes out of state too. It's very hard to do consultation and repatriation of these remains of these individuals throughout the country, essentially. So we're helping them provide information about what we hold and what we understand, and we're actually already working with Florida State University and Florida Museum of Natural History, and we've been actually involved in consultations as well as returning split collections too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Fine job. Katie would be proud. All right, now the next one is Bureau of Historic Preservation, and welcome to.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to try to keep this brief. So BHP, we've just kept chugging along, tackling our biggest challenge, which is always staffing. So I've been working with Alyssa to address all of our staffing holes and such. The good thing is that we're down to essentially addressing in compliance our OPS positions, so all of our career service positions are filled there, and then working with our new survey and registration supervisor to fill a number of positions in her section. Unfortunately, we did lose another one of our National Register historians just last month, but we already have the paperwork to re-advertise that position, or to advertise that position and go through the selection process to hopefully fill that so that she has the full set of historians helping her processing National Register nominations, reviewing survey reports, and helping with determinations of eligibility. We're also advertising for the tax credit coordinator because that's who we promoted to the survey and registration. So following along with what Alyssa's been trying to do in creating essentially a career ladder within BHP and larger DHR organization. That's what we've been doing is recognizing talented and successful individuals within the organization and giving them greater opportunities to grow and develop and to fill larger roles. Like myself, I got promoted up from being survey and registration supervisor. So we are working on all of that. It's a difficult environment, but we will keep hammering at that until we can finally fill all the holes and get us to there. The good thing is that everybody that has left us, it's been essentially all about Benjamin. And people love working here. They feel accomplished, that we do good work. We fulfilling projects and stuff like that. People are always sad to leave here, and that's a good thing. So there's that. And then Alyssa already mentioned we had our Preservation on Main Street conference last month. That was a huge success. And I look forward to helping with the planning for the next one that will hopefully be held here in Tallahassee next year. Further along with Main Street, we've got a couple of big projects. One of the big successes from this most recent legislative session was that we actually got the funding for a new staff person in the Main Street office. So there will be a Main Street planner that will assist our Main Street coordinator. So then we'll have 3 staff people dedicated to that program. So I've been working with the Main Street coordinator, Catherine Beck, to put together all that stuff, and we're almost to the point where I can give it to Alyssa and she can scribble all over it, and we can work on advertising that position. Again, to kind of create kind of a bench within the Main Street program, and to take some of the day-to-day administrative work off of Catherine Beck's shoulders, put it onto this new person so she can focus on more big-picture programmatic items and helping the communities work towards, there's a new accreditation process that National Main Street is instituting, that we have to work in helping our communities that would qualify for that to go through that process in managing new training. And we also want to set up a specific Florida level accreditation program to recognize those communities that are important within Main Street at the state level, but may not necessarily meet the more stringent requirements at the national level program. So there's a lot of work that's going on there, and if you do see Catherine Beck or Garrett Walsh, or program assistant, do thank them for all their hard work that they put into helping plan and carry out the Main Street conference last month. In National Register land, we had our National Register Review Board meeting yesterday, so thank you, commissioners, for attending in person or via webinar. I think it was a very successful meeting, the first one that Dr. Kira Lucas conducted with our staff, and so they're going to keep doing good work. We had 4 nominations presented that were approved by the board. We are working with the National Park Service and our new National Register Reviewer. It's been a learning process over the last 6 months or so. The National Park Service continues to refine how they are reviewing over National Register nominations. So we've had a higher than average rate of returns, but I think that we're getting to the point where we are anticipating what the National Park Service is expecting from National Register nominations in terms of documentation, associated documents like maps and photography and such. And we will get to the point where we'll be back to, we send it to them and they rubber stamp it because, we know what they are expecting. Recent successful listings include the St. Cloud Historic District. I'm very happy to report on that one. And the East Side Jacksonville Historic District, which recognized the last surviving African-American in-town neighborhood in Jacksonville. That's a big one. And then also in Jacksonville, the Duval County Armory, a really neat 1916 military Gothic revival building that is actually undergoing a tax credit. Which brings me to the next thing. The tax credit program continues along at a good pace. One of the biggest things that is changing with the program is the National Park Service is transitioning to an all-electronic submission/application process. That is coming into effect on the 14th of August. They promulgated new forms and procedures and stuff, and we have amended all of our workflows to essentially slot into that. So we're going to be accepting all electronic applications and doing everything like that, moving away from paper, which is hopefully going to help reduce the amount of time it takes for us to review and respond to applications, to forward our comments to the National Park Service, and to essentially assist with record/project management. And that's going to be a good thing. It's also helpful because the Park Service has recognized that they need to improve their communications with applicants and with the states, and so they are making clear movements in that direction, incorporating feedback, being more responsive to the various market forces that are impacting the utilization of the tax credit program. So I'm looking forward to seeing increased activity in that, and that will be hopefully will facilitate our work in hopefully creating the state tax credit, and if that gets instituted, that would then facilitate those workflows even better. And then hopefully we will then match what I believe should be our true level in tax credits. We have a lot of really good resources here in the state that would benefit from those, and making it a more attractive program by providing a state tax credit in addition to the federal one that would essentially all be done through one application to be a boon to the program. And then our compliance section continues chugging along. Like I said, they're fully staffed in terms of the career service staff. We have all of our FDOT reviewers now. So we received a report from our colleagues down the way that gave us 100% on everything in our reviews of the transportation project in terms of our responsiveness within established timelines, our comments, all that stuff. So I'm very happy that they were able to pull that off. And then for the remainder of our staff, I mean, over the last year, we've reviewed over 10,000 projects, over 1,000 of which were same-day reviews. We received the material, looked it all over, it all looked good, and we sent our responses that very same day. So our staff is amazing, and I am really excited to continue working with them. Otherwise, that's BHP in a nutshell. If there's anything else, you know, you feel free to ask me questions and stuff. You know, we're working on a number of different projects, you know, with refining some of our documents and providing better information to applicants and stuff like that. And then Main Street received a chunk of money to build a smartphone app for their program that would allow people to see what various Main Street communities have within their jurisdictions and businesses and stuff that we could then share with the public. So we'll be working with our IT folks here to build that program within the next year. That was another bit that we received in our budget. And then I'm going to be excited to work with Alyssa with all the cemetery stuff, because that's a big thing that we keep receiving questions about, and people are really eager to go after that program. Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir.
On the historic cemeteries, you know, a lot of that I suspect will be dollar requests to maintenance or, I mean, or, you know, put a marker up or anything like that. Have you guys thought about what the, you know, what the dollar amount could be for, you know, several years, or at least?
I will defer to Eric and Angie on that, because they're the ones who've been working on that aspect, you know, so.
Just a quick follow-up on the National Park Service and the projects that they're sending back to you.
Yes.
The sense I'm getting is that they're just because there aren't enough photographs, they're more technical issues, or are there some fundamental changes in
So in terms of substantive reviews, there have been certain things, you know, they are expecting a greater analysis of the settings of historic properties and how those relate to the integrity of a historic property and properly documenting that. They have also requested, especially for historic districts, a more comprehensive inventory of resources. So, for example, in a residential historic district, they expect us not only to identify and provide descriptions and a tabulation of all of the houses and stuff, but all of the ancillary structures, every garage and substantial shed and things like that. So it has required us to work either in-house or with a consultant to provide that level of additional documentation, because they are really seeing these as more comprehensive planning documents, more so than a historic. You know, this is why it's like, you know, it's like, okay, yes, that's good, but you need to be telling us exactly what is this, where is it all located, really justifying all of that documentation. Other things that we've had to address in terms of the National Register nominations, we're trying to find the Goldilocks point when it comes to appropriate levels of historic context. Certain historic nominations, they have asked for additional context, and I think part of that is that our National Register reviewer is not from the South. Her experience is primarily in the Midwest, so we have to explain things like, what is Miami modernism, and what makes that historically significant? What are the character-defining features? Things that for us is kind of like, you just look outside, you see it, and you know it, right? And in other cases, we've been told that we've provided too much, that we've kind of pigeonholed ourselves in a way where the context is so narrow that we need to look at things in a more broad sense. Like, for example, when we are arguing for local significance in terms of a community, we should be like City of Miami. It literally means the entire City of Miami, which can be difficult at times in, you know, like contextualizing a neighborhood. And then we have to look at, well, all over the City of Miami, and the issue is that we don't have comprehensive surveys for many places in the state of Florida. So trying to figure that out. But we've been working with them. They have been very communicative and responsive with us. We regularly speak with our National Register reviewer in Washington, D.C. now, which is very good. That's very different from how it used to be in the past, when the only time you'd hear from our reviewer is through official formal correspondence. So we speak with them on the phone, we email with them. They have given us opportunities to address their concerns without doing formal returns, which has been appreciated. So it is a learning process. And apparently this is part of a larger revamp within the National Park Service office in Washington, D.C. For a very long time, they had been incredibly short-staffed, and apparently they had been expediting reviews, and then now that they're fully staffed, they're really drilling into National Register nominations. And apparently, out of all the states in the Southeast, we are one of the best, if not the best, in terms of nominations being submitted to them. Other states have had to do much more work in doing the revisions based upon what I've heard from other state coordinators in the National Register program. So I think that we were in a good place. We are going towards an even better place. It's just learning these new things. And I think that Park Service itself is trying to figure these things out. They are putting out best practices documents now on a regular basis, which is very helpful, and we've been using those in improving our nominations.
Yeah, when they have personnel changes at the register, it always has a difficult ripple effect.
And the same thing has happened with us here, with some of our new compliance staff.
Right.
There are consultants that are accustomed to doing things with certain people for a very long time that now know these are the guidelines, you need to follow them, and some of those,
takes a while.
Things, yes. So I just accept it. We're learning each other's workflows and expectations, and that takes time. But it will result in better designations and documentation here in the state of Florida. I'm certain of it.
Good. Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Angie, with the grants program?
We've already talked about it a lot, so I don't
Of course.
really have a lot to add, just an update on applications. So applications for both small matching and special category were due June 1st. Staff has already completed the full review and release to the small matching panel of the small matching applications. They should be completing the special category and releasing those to you by the end of this month, to give you a month to look at them before the meeting. We received 74 small matching applications, of which 71 were eligible for a request amount of $3.1 million. And for special category, which is what you want to know, we received 47 applications.
Oh, that's all?
Last year, we received 42.
Okay.
So the total request amount is $12.9 million. Last year, it was 10.6. And as always, a handful will be withdrawn or found ineligible. So probably on the day when you review, it'll be somewhere around 40, maybe 42. I don't think it'll drop below 40 because there are not really that many ineligible so far. Eric, do you have any idea?
I think there's one withdrawn, and there's one that might be ineligible, we could be talking about.
So you're going to be reviewing somewhere. Last year, you reviewed 36. On the actual review day. So I would say maybe like 40 to 45 is what you'll be reviewing, which is doable in one day. But again, we always set aside 2 days in case you don't make it through in one day. So that's just a reminder of the dates. Again, September 27th and 28th, that's a Wednesday and a Thursday. And there's not a business meeting component to that meeting. It's all focused on the grant. As we always do, especially for the new members, we'll do a panel, FAC orientation once we release the applications, just to walk you through the system again. It hasn't changed from previous people who previously scored, but you'll have a chance to see how that system works before you start scoring them. And if you aren't already in our grant system, which is dosgrants.com, you'll be getting an email at some point when Eric, our grant supervisor, will create the panel, and you'll get an auto-generated email from the grant system saying create a profile. And that's where you would create your username and password. So previous users, it's your same username and password. For previous years, if you don't remember your password, you can always reach out to Eric, but you can do a password recovery through the system as well. And This is the main highlight on the special category. And then just to answer your question on the abandoned African American cemetery grants that are part of the new historic preservation or historic cemetery program. General Counsel assisted us with posting the notice of rule development yesterday. So we anticipate, if that process goes fine, then we don't have to do a workshop that we might, that could always happen, it could be requested. There would be a notice, the next step is the notice of proposed rule, which starts the 21-day public comment period. Currently, as drafted, we haven't, until we get to the notice of proposed rule, they're not finalized. So we do have the project at $50,000 each, which sounds low, but remember, we only have $1 million to play with. Yeah, and it's gonna be a truncated grant period because we're not gonna be able to have the cycle open to take applications until the rule is finalized. So we're probably not going to be able to have the review meeting for that until maybe November. So, but we do have the money already. So once we get the ranking done, which would not be by you, but by the advisory council, then once we have our final ranking and applications approved, then we can start rolling the grant award agreements out. But it's not fixed capital outlay money, it's regular operating money, so it is a 1-year fiscal year grant period. So that was another thing, is we didn't want to give people a lot of money and then they couldn't actually execute the project. They wrote the project too big. But in the future, our goal is we would update the grant guidelines in the future, like we do our normal grant guidelines for small matching and special category, and we could revisit the funding amount in the future. Right now, we don't really know how many applications we're going to get. I assume it will be more than we think, based on our experience with the applicants.
How are you gonna advertise it? That's what
now that we've sort of, up to this point, we've been working on internally developing guidelines and an application, working with department management to make sure, and GC to make sure those things are approved. So now that we're at the rule development stage, we're gonna start working on doing, public outreach on that, so webinars. We've met with Leader Driscoll's office a couple of times, and she was interested in maybe like helping coordinate some public outreach too, because she's the bill sponsor and was on the abandoned cemetery task force as well. So more to come on that, but we'll keep you posted on the outreach. But we definitely have to make sure people understand the program and what's allowable and what we fund with it ahead of the application cycle opening.
I would also, in my own personal opinion, you need to reach out to Ms. Alcibiades Barnes. She's got her own little.
We're definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
She's got her own.
So this is one-time money?
It is non-recurring funding,
Right.
so I guess it could potentially be placed in the budget again next year, but
Right.
we don't know yet.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for sure, but what we were sort of thinking is that it might be something similar to our other grant programs where we just submit a budget request every year for whatever
Right.
applications we get, but, that hasn't been nailed down completely by.
Yeah, it could become routine.
Yeah.
Right.
So we were discussing whether or not we could even, if we have extra applications, maybe we put those in and the legislature could consider funding sort of a rollover list or something for the
Right.
next time, and then we could sort of start that process.
Yeah.
Ahead of time.
Thanks to Eric for helping develop those guidelines, and his staff will be, that's something his staff is gonna take on as well, is this whole new grant program potentially that will continue, as well. So it's good that we got the career service, position converted from OPS this year, because that helps with attrition and,
Great.
Oh, one last thing.
Yeah.
In your meeting materials, you got a few updates on projects that are open, so we're gonna try and do that. I know you guys like to see those.
Yeah.
We're gonna try and do those consistently. Sometimes they fall off we forget about them, but we're gonna try and make sure that happens every meeting. So, and if there's any project that you ever actually want a specific update on, just let us know ahead of the meeting and we'll make sure we can provide that.
Yeah, I love these, by the way.
Yeah.
These are good for better, lobby tools. The only other, make sure you have a nice selection of them of all the state.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, we got
But I
one
think
from
these are
Pensacola, one from Miami, one
Right.
from, wherever, but.
Some of of it just depends on where the
I understand,
projects
but my
are,
point back to
and
you is,
if they haven't done
everybody's
any
here.
Well, that's the
work,
point.
send in images, it's hard to update you on it, so.
Yeah,
And I'm hopeful when we get our new information specialist, we'll be able to do a little more of this
Yeah.
on social media.
I mean, this is good. I mean, you know,
There's
you
many more than this.
take some, you know, some wonderful pictures and, you know.
yeah. I was impressed with how much the grants were, and how much they did with them. Like that locomotive over out in Century, I mean, $5,000, you know, and it looked beautiful. So it was just, and you know, everybody loves that. So anyway, and the reconstruction or the repair of a lot of these old wooden buildings, they look real, you know. So I thought it's a great job.
Okay, any other questions?
I would just like to make a point about the, tendency at this point I have seen of the legislature developing individual projects submitted by members that are finding their way into the appropriation bill. There were a substantial number of them this year.
How many?
One was $36 million,
There were,
okay?
there were 19,
The Flagler College.
19.
I'm sorry.
3 were small matching and 16 were special category, and the governor vetoed 3 as a special category and 1 as a small matching, I think.
The Flagler one's an emergency too. I mean,
Well, I understand.
The concrete
Yeah, I understand.
used back then without steel, the whole could collapse.
A couple.
And it also was the speaker's district.
I don't know, John, as a,
I don't know, that's been kind of a nagging problem, which is why.
Well, it is,
so
it
you're
is.
gonna stop
My point,
the right to
Madam Chair,
petition your government?
my point was, if there is a way we can encourage, and this could be an informal kind of conversation with the staff director of appropriations in both chambers,
Yeah,
to encourage the chairs of those committees to try to divert some of these projects into this process.
well,
It's
there's
much
no
more-
downside to that.
No,
No,
there's
there's
not.
not.
There's not. So just making that observation, this could get totally out of hand if it isn't already.
Yeah.
Unless we at least make an effort.
But, I mean, you know, I was concerned about that at one time, but, you know, I was assured that we actually, you know, these are run the same way as as special category grants.
They are
There
not. They are not.
No, they're not. They're run.
Well, no, they are run
That's
through.
all political.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Technical part.
Right.
Once they're funded, yeah, we do, run them through our grant program with grant award agreements and stuff, but there is oftentimes issues that come up with those member projects because the thing that is in the appropriations request that's approved oftentimes are things that we don't fund, so then we have to do a lot of people that don't understand when they request it from the member that, everything I wanna do, I might be told I can't do once it gets into the grant because it's not historic preservation or it's, not consistent with Secretary of Interior standards. So, I mean, we do have those issues, but we do, sign grant award agreements with them, just like any other project.
Good.
I don't know that you'll ever totally do away with them, but let's remind ourselves, that's why this commission was created.
Exactly right.
I agree.
Okay? And so whatever we can do to encourage projects coming through this process, which I think is a great
Right.
review and with some very competent people around this table.
I would say that you need to make that argument to OPP staff as opposed to
Well,
approach staff.
whoever needs to hear it, needs to hear it.
Right.
Because, the only way that this can stop is that they get vetoed. Because if you look at like the little White House, do they even come to us anymore? They had I think they've been in the last 2, in Key West.
Oh.
Truman's little White House.
Well, they came through us.
Yeah, but they've also kind of they're like, we find the appropriations process in Southern Strategies far more easy to deal with than.
Well, it's not like I haven't been around the process.
I know. I mean, my point is that you know the process well.
I hear you, but I
Thanks,
also think
Dave.
we have a duty to try to assert the role of this commission and to make the maximum use of the resources and to get the best outcome.
Yep.
And I'll leave it at that.
Well, let's think about that as the new session comes around, you know, in the plan.
It comes around early this year.
I know, when does it start?
January.
Oh, Lord, that's another one, that's right, okay. Well, fall's coming, yeah.
The best part about a January session is it's over in March.
That's true, that's true, that's
But
right.
here, you get to see Tallahassee in May, you know, which is really gorgeous.
Yeah. All right, so now, we are at the end of our official program except for other business. Is there any other business?
I reluctantly do this at this late hour,
Oh, take your
Madam
time,
Chair,
we're good.
but I'd like to know what the status of the Holocaust Memorial Project is. Does
Well,
anyone know?
Oh,
Okay.
I called EMS yesterday.
Oh, good, go ahead.
Yeah. I called and asked because I thought you might wonder, and, they said that the deadline had passed for accepting names for the memorial. They had received a little over 1,000 names, and they are currently waiting for the architect to send them the final design. My follow-up question was, is this the same design that you guys looked at? They said yes. He said that, what he means is placement of the limestone versus the metal on the design, the type of metal that they're using, the font size, those kinds of things, and the final rendering. And then I, followed up and asked about the quote, if the quote had changed from the George Washington quote, and, he said no, no.
What?
No.
I was told
Oh,
that it
you are
had.
kidding me.
But then they did say they were considering another
Yeah,
quote,
I heard that they had.
but he also seemed like,
Please.
that wasn't something he had really thought about, and he said he would follow up with me and find out and see. Because I asked him if the quote decision was with EMS or if it was with the cabinet, and, he said he would check. And I did remind him that that was something that all of the commissioners were unanimous about, that the George Washington quote wasn't appropriate, so.
More importantly, all the Holocaust groups
Yes,
really had some real concerns.
yes.
Well, no kidding.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, he's gonna get back to me on that, but that's all of the update I have right now.
Will you send us an update on that, please, as soon as you hear about at least that part?
On the quote?
Yes,
Yeah.
And the slavery memorial?
I don't have any updates, I think it's moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
I take it their quote was high.
No.
First of all, it's completely irrelevant, inappropriate.
No, we're talking about words, not money.
Oh,
Right, words,
gotcha.
sorry, dude.
A Holocaust
Right.
memorial, yeah.
Yeah.
I still like Never Again, which is on Dachau.
That's a fine quote,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
And there are
All we need
so
to
many
say.
other options.
Yeah.
The other quote, I don't know the quote, the other quote they were considering, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the person, but he was, a Nuremberg, lawyer, I think, and he lived in Florida, so makes more sense. But I'm not sure what the quote was, they didn't tell me that.
And speaking of Holocaust Memorial, I saw, just as an aside in the news last little while ago, that in Germany, at the train station, one of the train stations where the Jews were put into the boxcars headed for the gas chambers, they have, life-size bronze people right there at the train station where you walk in, not at the station, right where you walk into the train, the cars themselves, and they're part of the crowd. And I thought that was really effective.
Yeah.
You know, little kids, women, old men, you know, all of the kind of people, everybody, that were Jews or unwanted people. Yeah, right there where you are today, getting on the train. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Where was that? Germany, somewhere in Germany. I think it was Heidelberg, but I'm not sure.
I mean, I've walked around and they have little brass plaques on various apartments
Yeah.
of people that were,
Right.
you know, that were arrested
Right.
and gone, you know, and
It's
it's
everywhere.
all over
Speaking
the,
of never again,
Yeah.
right.
which I found to be just utterly fascinating.
Yes, it's everywhere.
I went ahead and forwarded the designs to the director of the Holocaust Museum. It's on the board with, set
Good.
on the ACHP
In
board.
DC, right.
In DC,
Uh-huh.
so I'm hoping Sarah was kind enough to send me the drawings, so just to get his opinion,
Right.
since, you know, they've designed major Holocaust museum, and he's involved with the one in Israel too, so see what he says. And yesterday, I had the opportunity to go look at some work in Mariana, and I saw the Dozier, the memorial, very impressive. It's about the size of this room. The only thing I didn't like was that the weeds were everywhere already, and it's brand new, right? Like weeds everywhere. I mean, it's like, that's so disrespectful, you know?
Right.
But it's very moving. I mean, the sculpture pieces are very impressive.
Incredible.
You get the image right away with the boys and the kids and how they're, you know, and the equipment and
I'm
stuff.
gonna go see that, I'm going that way.
Yeah,
I'm
go take a
stop
look
by
at it.
and take a look
I
at it.
should have taken a picture, so.
Yeah,
It's really impactful. I went to the dedication,
yeah.
heard some of the men speak that day,
Oh,
and
wow.
something I will never forget.
I think they're waiting for the art.
Any other business?
Yeah, we need an official photo.
Well,
All right,
and we are taking, Commissioner Hoyt on a tour later, so if anybody else would like to join us in the conservation lab, collections, and if we have time, we'll do a look around this.
Can we have an official photo when we're actually in our suits, like for the actual real live meeting?
For me.
Yes.
Oh, this is kind of your Facebook pic. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
The first time you all are here.
Right.
You know, she yelled at me for wearing jeans last time, and now I'm,
Feeling much better?
Well, thanks very much.
You do, the shirt is unusual.
Yeah, am I not in the photo? Okay.
Come on, Joe.
Steve. Come on, Steve.
Come on, Don.
Come over here.
Yeah, no, be careful with your nameplate, don't be behind somebody who's not you.
Take your nameplate, and I'll take mine.
I like that, actually.
Okay, that's good.
No bunny rabbit.
All right. Smile.
Good, thank you.
We share?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Now, is it, yes?
Kathleen's mom passed away last night.
Oh, no, oh,
Sorry to hear that.
so
He
sorry.
was ill for a long time.
Yes.
Like my dad last summer, so, you know, but he's resting.
Yeah, no more suffering.
But I love being here with you all.
Well, thank you for being here today. Thank you. Had every reason not to.
For some reason, I had a subcommittee meeting on my calendar this afternoon. Can I take that one off?
Yes, definitely. We're not meeting today.
We're done.
No, we're done with that.
All right, so is there anybody from the public that's out there? There are a couple of people from the press. Do you have any questions of us today? Sure.
Can you hear us?
Were you calling me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. My name is Terrace Kennedy. I reside in Crestview, Florida. My father's family is from Baker, Florida, and my grandfather has several roads named after him in Baker. And my hopes is to rename one of them after my grandmother, Julia May Kennedy. The current roads are as follows: Sherman Kennedy North, Sherman Kennedy West, and Sherman Kennedy South. Now, Sherman Kennedy South is split into two separate roads by Sherman Kennedy West. That specific top half of South is owned by the Blackwater River Forestry, and there are no houses residing on that specific road. The bottom half of Sherman Kennedy South is adjacent to the top half of Sherman Kennedy South. So you would basically have to get back onto Sherman Kennedy West and drive maybe about 50 to 100 feet to get to the bottom half of Sherman Kennedy South. And when I say bottom half, I'm referring to if you're looking at an actual map. It can be pretty confusing in that area with so many Sherman Kennedy roads. Also, I work for the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office, and several deputies have told me how confusing that area can be when they get a call for service or emergencies. So possibly this could also help relieve some of that confusion. If you don't mind, I'd also like to tell you a little bit about my grandmother. My grandmother was born Julia May Helms on May 20th, 1907 in a small farmhouse in Holmes County, Florida, to Mitchell Helms and Annie Sutton Helms. Her father was a turpentine farmer. So throughout her youth, her family moved around quite a bit to different turpentine camps. When she turned 16, she met my grandfather, Robert Sherman Kennedy, and he courted her, as he put it, for 2 years until they were married. They had 7 children together, and although poor, they were very rich in happiness. My grandmother was a true angel, the most patient, kind, charitable person I ever knew. Her calloused, cracked hands spoke volumes of who she was as a person, a wife who truly worked in the fields with her husband, milked cows, helped grow, slaughter, and can food to feed her family. Yet the tender mother who nurtured not only her own children, but also 4 of her grandchildren as well. My cousin Letha Young Porter shared one of her quotes with me, which was that she had a vivid memory of sitting beside her grandmother as her house burned down. As she was losing everything she had, all they had worked for, she sat on a chair eating ice cream that Miss Carly Cook brought from Olive Branch. And she walked over and put her arm around her grandmother and kissed her on the cheek and said, "Granny, I'm so sorry. I love you." And she replied with great faith, "Thanks, sweetheart. Everything will work out somehow." Everyone knows behind every good man stands an even better woman, supporting, encouraging, pushing, praying for her husband's success. Julia May Kennedy was that woman. And before she passed away, she wrote a long letter to her children. And in one part, she stated, "One day while riding to church on a wagon, it made me think back on how much of my life has made me so happy, how much I loved my family, and how much I loved the gospel, and I wouldn't trade my life for anything." Both of my grandparents were devoted, hardworking Christians, and together they built a farm and a family on a foundation that still stands today. And I would love to honor her name, Julia May Kennedy. So my hopes is to rename that section of Sherman Kennedy South after her, Julia May Kennedy Road.
Oh, I see. So, what's the process for renaming?
So first,
A road is a different animal too, I thought.
well, first, I'm wondering if it's a county road or a state road. I would say if it's a county road, discuss it with the county.
Your local government, yeah.
If it's a state road, then we can put you in touch with someone from DOT and see if that's appropriate.
I've been going back and forth with quite a few people. I've been sent to DOT and then the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Nobody is really responsive.
It's a Forest Service road. It's a Forest Service road. Federal or state?
This is state.
Okay, then we have some contacts with the State Forest Service.
Right.
That's a county commission.
Black River or Blackwater, I believe, is who
Blackwater.
Blackwater.
Okay.
And the woman, I think her name is Miss Queena. Has she reached back out to you at this point? She did? Okay.
Okay. So I think it would be up to that agency to come to us and present. I don't know if you were on the call earlier when we had FDLE came and presented. I think that's how that would work, is that the agency would come and present to us on behalf of, changing the name. And then the commission would take a vote.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And something like that, we're gonna really need some local government approval, or I'd like to see some type of letter or sponsorship or something of that nature.
Okay.
I mean, I guess if it's in a state, I think support letters are great, but that, again, work with that, state forest or wherever the road is, and they will be able to.
Have you found out someone that you can contact?
She spoke to Ms. Queena. That was the information that I was able to provide to her.
Good.
But at one point, Ms. Queena was unresponsive. I'm not sure the reason why. But what did Ms. Queena say to you, Ms. Kennedy?
She said that I would need to speak with her boss, Mr. Creamer, and Mr. Creamer. I told him that I was going to be on a Zoom meeting today, and he just called me like this morning when I was on the Zoom meeting with you guys, and he told me that he would forward my information to a Mr. Howell, their resource administrator. So I'm just trying to go through all the steps, excuse me, to see if I could get to the right person and get it all figured out.
Yeah, definitely, if let them know, we could put it on the agenda, a later agenda for the meeting.
And if it helps, I can give, this is Parker Dest, I'm one of the commissioners, I'm from Okaloosa County as well, I live in the south end of the county.
Okay.
I'm gonna give contact information for Nathan Boyles, who is your county commissioner, and
Correct.
also the county administrator, John Hofstad. I'll give that information at the end of this meeting to Ms. Johnson, so that you can start the process of reaching them, so that they can be on your side to petition some of these, agencies above our heads to be able to bring it back if it's necessary for that. Hopefully, it won't even have to come back to us. It might be as simple as getting it done at the local level. But I'll get that contact information, so that it can be shared with you.
Yeah, I originally started off with Nathan Boyle's office, and they told me that I needed to, excuse me, contact the Tallahassee area because they're the ones that it's state-owned, basically. So they told me to contact you all.
So that they would have to fund, I think it's DOT Region 3. I will send you my contact information for over there.
Okay,
Okay,
We're gonna do our best to make sure you get to the right person.
we'll help you.
right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy, and good luck. We'll help you if you need help.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Have a good day.
I got a 7-hour drive, are we done?
No, not quite, not quite. Anything else? Anyone else in the public who has a question or comment? Okay. So now, we can adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. You second, and we don't need a vote. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Do you have parking questions for us?
I have tokens upstairs. I will get them for you all. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'll be right back.
Big.
What?
It's 9:50, yeah. So, when do you go back there? Well, that's quite a project. Yeah. Good. Okay.